Ladies and gentlemen, the academic 5 minutes is past, so we would like to start the second day of our conference. The first point is the protection of the European border and the problems of the illegal migration. The rules are really similar than yesterday, so after the first and second speech, everyone who give a sign to me that he would like to take a speech or have a speech, it's absolutely possible until 2 minutes, unfortunately not more, because this program will finish at 12 o'clock. I will speak, my lecture is on Hungarian language, so please use the interpreter. Hölgyeim és uraim, nyugodtan mondhatom, hogy a mostani napirendi pontunk az Európai Unió külső határvédelme és az illegális migráció problémája, az egy olyan probléma, amelyet ha nem tudunk megoldani, nem kezelni, hanem megoldani, el fog vezetni az Európai Unió halálához, széteséséhez. Mindennél jobban alátámasztja ezt az állítást a ma reggeli legfrissebb hír. Az Európai Unió legnagyobb államának vezetője, Olaf Scholz tulajdonképpen bejelentette, hogy Németország minden határán bevezeti a kötelező határellenőrzést, és még egyéb szigorításokat is az illegális migráció megfékezésére és kezelésére, ami tulajdonképpen a Schengeni Egyezmény egyfajta végét is jelenti. Magyarország a kezdetek kezdetétől, amikor jelentkezett ez a migrációs probléma, alapvetően azt az álláspontot tette magáévá, hogy Magyarország megvédi az Európai Unió schengeni külső határait. Ez egy 70 kilométeres határhossz Ukrajna felé, és egy 175 kilométeres határhossz Szerbia felé, illetőleg 2015-ben még egy ennél jóval hosszabb határ volt, ami nem schengeni határ volt, Horvátország felé. Két jogszabályt, ami kötelező érvényű, tartottunk irányadónak. Az egyik az ENSZ menekültügyi egyezménye, ami a menekültek kapcsán azt írja elő, hogy az első biztonságos országban a menekültnek meg kell állni, és a hatóságoknál be kell adni a menekült státusz iránti kérelmét. A másik a schengeni egyezmény, nevezetesen, hogy a schengeni határon senkit nem lehet átengedni, nem lehet beengedni Európába, akinek nincsen erre feljogosító irata, útlevél, engedély, bármi. Miután Magyarország elhelyezkedése speciális, a Ukrajnát leszámítva hozzánk nem lehet úgy érkezni, hogy nem halad át valaki egy harmadik biztonságos országon, így a magyar álláspont a kezdetek kezdetétől rendkívül világos és strikt. 2015-től kezdődően 1.200.000 intézkedést hajtott végre a magyar rendőrség az illegális migránsok megállítása kapcsán. Eközben természetesen 2014 óta az ukrán határon a háború elől menekülteket, mint első biztonságos ország, ennek megfelelően kezeljük. Csak érdekeségképp mondom, hogy míg a déli határon, a schengeni határon illegálisan határátlépést megkísérlők 99,9%-a, ez 1.200.000 ember idáig, nem működik együtt a hatóságokkal, nincs neki irata, nyilvánvalóan hazudik az eredeti országáról, a személyes adatairól, eközben az ukrán határon átkelők 100%-a együttműködik a magyar hatóságokkal, iratot mutat fel, akkor is, ha lejárt, iratot mutat fel és valós személyi adatokat közöl. Tehát teljesen nyilvánvaló, hogy ott az együttműködési hajlandóság a háború elől menekülőkkel kapcsolatban 100%, míg a déli határon senki nem hajlandó együttműködni a magyar hatóságokkal, illetve semmilyen hatósággal. A arányokat tekintve eddig 1.200.000 illegális határátlépéssel kapcsolatban intézkedett a magyar rendőrség 2015-től kezdődően a déli határon, az ukrajnai határon 2015-től kezdődően kevesebb, mint 100 intézkedést kellett foganatosítani, tehát annyira kevés volt azoknak az embereknek a száma, akik illegális határátlépést kíséreltek meg. Természetesen tudomásul vesszük, hogy nem mindenki úgy gondolkozik az illegális migrációról, mint mi, viszont mi azt állítjuk, hogy ettől függetlenül lehet különbözőképpen vélekedni, a Schengeni egyezményt, illetőleg az ENSZ menekültügyi egyezményeit mindenkinek be kell tartani, tehát ott nem lehet válogatni. Ennek megfelelően meglehetősen szigorú a magyar felfogás az Európai Unió Schengeni határainak őrzésével és megvédésével kapcsolatban. Mindezt Magyarország úgy hajtotta végre, hogy 2015-től kezdődően erre több mint 2 milliárd eurót költöttünk, ebben Európai Uniós forrás támogatás nincs. Tehát az Európai Unió egyáltalán nem támogatta a magyar határvédelmi küzdelmet. Természetesen a Frontex járt nálunk, a Frontex észlelte a helyzetet, de érdemi segítséget a schengeni határvédelemben nem nyújtott. Ennek megfelelően Magyarország a saját költségvetéséből finanszírozza továbbra is a határvédelmet és az ezzel kapcsolatos kiadásokat. Hölgyeim és uraim, a részletekről, a magyar kormány álláspontjáról 2 előadót szeretnék szólítani, de mielőtt erre sor kerülne, egy rövid bejátszást tekintsenek meg a magyar déli határon uralkodó állapotokról, hogy is néz ki az, amikor azt mondjuk, hogy az illegális migránsok egyáltalán nem működnek együtt a magyar hatóságokkal. Kérném a bejátszást. Köszönöm szépen, hölgyeim és uraim! Láthatják a filmből is, nem ritka az erőszak a magyar határőrizeti szervek tagjaival szemben. Ugyanakkor sor került már fegyverhasználatra is, tehát éles fegyverhasználatra, amit a migránsok használtak a magyar határőrizeti szervek ellen. A határőrizeti szervezetek nem használnak éles lőfegyvert, illetőleg megpróbálják olyan eszközökkel kordában tartani az illegális migrációt, ami nem okoz sérülést az elkövetőknek. Minden esetben visszakísérjük őket a határ túloldalára, és arra kérjük őket, hogy Szerbiában, Belgrádban, vagy a magyar, vagy a bármelyik uniós ország nagykövetségén adják be a menekült státusz iránti kérelmüket, és azt elbírálják a hatóságok, ahogy ez egyébként a szabályokban elő van írva. Hölgyeim és uraim, a rövid bevezető után Rétvári Bencét, a belügyminiszter helyettest, parlamenti államtitelt kérem meg, hogy tartsa meg beszédét. Öné a szó.
Köszönöm szépen a szót, köszönöm szépen a meghívást. Elnök úr, tisztelt képviselő hölgyek és urak, tisztelt jelenlévők. Köszönöm szépen a meghívást, hogy itt szólhatok önökhöz röviden a magyar külső határvédelemről és a magyar migrációs politikáról. Azért, mert ez egy jó példa arra, hogy hogyan tud működni egy migrációs politika, hogy tud jól működni, számtalan más modell mellett. De mindenek előtt szeretném megköszönni önöknek, hogy eljöttek a magyar EU elnökségnek erre a rendezvényére, erre az eseményére, hiszen mi magyarok sokszor hozzászoktunk ahhoz, hogy a mi migrációs politikánkról is úgy alkotnak véleményt, hogy semmifajta tárgyi ismeretük nincsen. Önök eljöttek Magyarországra, eljöttek Budapestre, megtiszteltek minket ezzel, amit nagyon köszönünk, és örülünk, hogy helyben akarnak tájékozódni. Egyúttal felajánlom mindenkinek, aki annyira helyben szeretne tájékozódni, hogy akár a határa is ellátogat, egy későbbi alkalommal ezt szívesen megtesszük, és bemutatjuk önöknek, hogy hogyan működik a magyar külső határvédelem. Úgyhogy köszönöm ezt önöknek a Bel- és Igazságügyi Tanácsban is, ahol mi a belügyminisztérium részéről rendszeresen részt veszünk. Szinte minden alkalommal a migráció napirenden van, mint az egyik legfontosabb európai biztonsági kérdés. Éppen ezért örülök, hogy ennek a tanácskozásnak is része. Úgyhogy örülök, hogy itt köszönhetjük önöket, és a helyszínen tájékozódnak. Amit ebben a videóban láttak, az nem egy amerikai akciófilmből volt részlet. Ezt nem valamilyen fikció hozta létre, hanem ez a húsvér valóság a magyar határon napról napra, évek óta. Ezeket a felvételeket az okoskerítésnek a kamerái rögzítették, illetve az embercsempészek rögzítették részben, hogy ezzel reklámozzák magukat az interneten, hogy ők milyen harciasan vágják fel a magyar kerítést, határkerítést, és milyen harciasan szállnak szembe a rendőrökkel. Önök is láthatták, amikor megjelennek a rendőrök, akkor nem az igazolványaikat mutatják föl, hanem megdobálják őket, ami a kezük ügyébe kerül mindennel, vagy akár még, ugye fegyverek is láthatóak voltak, akár kés, akár lőfegyver is látható volt ezekben a videókban. Itt is szeretném megköszönni a magyar rendőröknek és a magyar határvadászoknak, hogy immáron 2015 óta védik a magyar déli határt. Ez tehát a húsvér valóság. Sokan ezt Nyugat-Európában nem így mutatják be. Ezt a fajta erőszakot kicenzúrázzák a hírekből. Sokszor ezt nem lehet megjeleníteni. De ha a valóságot szeretnénk látni, akkor igenis ezt is látni kell, hogy itt iratok nélkül sokan agresszívan, és szinte mindenki az embercsempészek segítségével érkezik. A magyar migrációs politika 2015 óta nem változott. Kevés olyan ország van, amelyeknek nem kellett semmennyit változtatni a migrációs politikáján, Magyarország ilyen. Ugyanazt valljuk ma is, mint akkor, és ez nagyon egyszerűen, nagyon világosan, rövid mondatokban összefoglalható. Az alapja, hogy a külső határokat meg kell védeni. A másik alapja, hogy a menekültügyi eljárást az EU területén kívül kell lefolytatni. Az a tapasztalatunk ugyanis, hogyha a külső határokat nem védjük meg, magyarul bárki besétálhat, akkor onnantól kezdve azok az emberek nem várják meg az eljárás lefolytatását, és nem vetik magukat alá az esetleges kitoloncolásnak, hanem akár évtizedekig is illegálisan élnek az Európai Unió területén. Ezt különböző terrorcselekményeknél láthattuk, hogy egyes emberek már több országot megjártak addigra, több országban illegálisan tartózkodtak. Mi azt mondjuk, a legfontosabb, hogy a határt meg kell védeni. Ezért építettünk kerítést, önök is látják, ez egy dupla kerítés, okos kerítés, tehát mozgásérzékelővel, kamerákkal, sok minden éjjellátókkal ellátott kerítés, és ezért vezényeltünk oda sok rendőrt, sok határvadászt, és ezért védjük meg a külső határt. És az, hogy Európában egyre több belső határellenőrzést állítanak vissza, az egyenes következménye annak, hogy a külső határt nem védjük meg. Ha a külső határt megvédenénk, a problémát az Európai Unió határain kívül tartanánk, akkor nem kéne ezzel szembenéznünk nap mint nap Európa nagyvárosaiban, amivel szembe kell nézni. Alap a külső határvédelem. Csak az léphesse át az Európai Unió külső határát, akinek ehhez az igazolványai, az engedélyei, a határozatai, az egész menekültügyi eljárása végén a befogadó nyilatkozata megvan. Akinek nincs jogcíme az Európai Unió területén tartózkodni, az ne tartózkodhasson az Európai Unió területén. Ez eléggé egyszerű, eléggé világos, összhangban van a Schengeni és Dublini szabályokkal. A másik pedig, hogy az eljárás az Unió területén kívül kell lefolytatni. Az előbb is utaltam rá, ha valakit egyszer beengedünk fizikailag, akár csak Európa területére, a kontinens területére, szinte nem is az Európai Unió konkrét területére, az már szinte biztos, hogy ha akar, akkor itt tud maradni. Addig, amíg nem lépünk föl közösen hatékonyan a külső határok megvédésére, addig az embercsempészek fogják diktálni az ütemet. Amennyi embert hoznak, annyi ember fog bejutni. Amikor többet, amikor kevesebbet. Ha valaki repülővel legálisan szeretne bejönni az Unió területére, a repülőjegye kb. 500 euróba kerül. Ehhez képest sokkal drágább, hogyha valaki embercsempészek segítségével jön. Ugye a magyar rendőrök, a magyar határőrök pontosan tudják az árfolyamokat, a tarifákat, a munkadíjakat, hogy mennyit kérnek a szervezett alvilág tagjai, a bűnözői csoportok azért, hogy az embereket csempészék, hiszen ezt sokan elmondják nekik. Mondjuk Törökországtól, hogy Szerbiáig elvigyék őket, az 4200-6000 euró, a magyar pénznemben 2,2 millió forint, az 500 eurós, 200 000 forintos repjegyhez képest. Egy Törökország-Ausztria útvonalon 9500 eurót kérnek fejenként, 3,5 millió forintot. A legnépszerűbb a Törökország-Németország útvonal. Itt az embercsempészeknek, az illegális migránsok 14 000 eurót fizetnek ki fejenként, ami azt jelenti, hogy 5,2 millió forintot. Miközben 500 euró lenne a repülőjegy, 14 000 eurót fizetnek ki azért, hogy ne kelljen legálisan, hanem illegálisan tudjanak az Európai Unió területére érkezni. Ebből is látszik, hogy sokkal inkább az illegalitása fontos számukra, és sokkal olcsóbb lenne legálisan jönni, és messze drágább, hogyha illegálisan jönnek. Az illegális Európába jutás nem a szegény emberek megoldása. Akinek sok pénze van, az tud illegálisan jönni. Akinek kevesebb pénze van, az tud legálisan jönni, hiszen a repülőjegy csak 500 euró, nem több. Az elmúlt években, hogy az már elhangzott elnök úrtól is, több mint 1 millió illegális határátlépési kísérletet akadályoztak meg a magyar rendőrök, a magyar határvadászok. Mi ezt minden nap megköszönjük nekik, hiszen ezért élünk mi itt Magyarországon közbiztonságban. Az elmúlt években ezért mi támadást kaptunk csak, különböző jogi és politikai nyomásgyakorlást, anyagi támogatást mindehez nem. 2 milliárd eurót, 800 milliárd forintot költöttünk külső határvédelemre az elmúlt években. Ebből a 2 milliárd euróból, ahogy mondtam, több mint 1 millió illegális határátlépési kísérletet akadályoztunk meg. Gondolják végig, mennyivel többen lennének Európában az illegális migránsok, mennyivel nagyobb kockázat lenne a közbiztonságra, mennyivel nagyobb terrorveszély lenne, hogyha ezeket az illegális határátlépési kísérleteket mi magyarok nem akadályoztuk volna meg. Nem csak, hogy ezért elismerést nem kaptunk, magunk is megtettük volna, hiszen a magyar emberekkel konszenzusban cselekszünk, a magyar emberek többször megerősítették, hogy nekik is ez az álláspontjuk, hanem a politikai nyomásgyakorlás és a jogi eljárások mellett legutóbb egy gigantikus bírságot is, 200 millió eurót is kaptunk, illetve emellé egy 1 millió eurós napi bírságot, amit mi rendkívül igazságtalannak tartunk, és nem fogadjuk el, hogy így akarnak ránk nyomást gyakorolni, mi meg akarjuk továbbra is védeni a külső határokat, ami az Európai Unió külső határa és Magyarország külső határa is. Éppen ezért Magyarország vizsgálja, hogy tudja peres úton is ezt a 2 milliárd eurós igényét érvényesíteni, hiszen ezt legalább részben az Uniónak kellene fedezni, hiszen a teljes Európai Uniót védjük ezzel a tevékenységünkkel. Szerintünk ez lenne a jövő útja, a külső határvédelem. hogy az európai országok összefogva a külső határokat megvédik. Meg kéne védenünk pár száz kilométernyi határszakaszt, kb. 440 kilométernyi szárazföldi határszakaszt, hogy átjárható maradhasson 7500 belső határszakasza az Európai Uniónak. 440 külső határszakasz megvédésért cserébe 7500 belső határszakasz átjárhatóságát kapnánk meg hosszú távon, és nem lennek ilyen intézkedések, mint a franciák, a németek, vagy sok mindenki más részéről, ami a belső határoknak a lezárásáról szól. Ezzel szemben mi nem látjuk ennek a támogatottságát, hogy a külső határszakaszokon közösen, tényleg úgy, mint Magyarországon, kerítéssel is, rendőrökkel is és jogi szabályozással is megvédjük a külső határt, sőt ennek az ellenkezőjét látjuk ebben a gigabírságban, pedig a gyakorlat jó. Mindenkit meghívok, mindenkinek bemutatjuk, hogy amikor lemegy a nap, amikor kezd sötétedni, hogyan aktivizálódnak a csoportok, hogy vágják át a kerítést, milyen taktikával támadnak egyszerre több helyen, hogy próbálják megosztani a rendőri erőket, és a rendőrök hogy tudják mégis elkapni őket. Szívesen bemutatjuk. Nincs benne semmi titok, nincs benne semmi törvénytelen. A magyar emberek biztonsága ezért nagyobb, mert ezt törvényes módon, törvényes keretek között bemutatjuk, és szerintünk az lenne helyes, hogyha más országban is ezt tennék. Nyilván önök is olvasták a hírekben, hogyha az Európai Unió arra kényszeríteni Magyarországot, hogy beengedje az illegális migránsokat, akkor viszont a szükséges Európai Uniós eljárásrend lefolytatása után önkéntesen, aki ezt igényli, egy útra, egy ingyenes szállítást vállalunk nekik Röszkéről, a magyar határtól Brüsszelbe, az Európai Bizottság székhely elé. Hogyha az Európai Bizottság szeretné látni ezeket az illegális migránsokat, akkor őket buszokkal oda szállítjuk, de természetesen ez az európai eljárásrend lefolytatása után történik meg. Mi arra törekszünk, hogy ne ez a kimenet legyen, hanem arra törekszünk, hogy továbbra is legyenek megvédettek a külső határok. Ahogy mondtam is önöknek, mi ezt önöknek is készséggel bemutatjuk, mert ezt korábban sokfajta képviselőnek vagy újságírónak is bemutattuk. Ez a magyar migrációs politika. Két egyszerű mondat: a külső határok megvédése és a menekültügyi eljárásnak az unió területén kívüli lefolytatása, hogy utána a határozat végrehajtható legyen. Én még egyszer köszönöm önöknek, hogy itt vannak Budapesten. Köszönjük, hogy meglátogatták a fővárosunkat, számunkra ez a leggyönyörűbb főváros. Köszönjük, hogy itt vannak a parlamentünkben is. Köszönjük, hogy meghallgatják a mi beszámolóinkat is. Mi is érdeklődéssel fogjuk hallgatni az önök hozzászólásait a továbbiakban, és bízom benne, hogy így akkor előbb-utóbb valóban meg tudjuk közösen védeni Európa békét és Európa biztonságát. Köszönöm szépen, hogy meghallgattak.
Köszönöm szépen. Hölgyeim és uraim, nem tartozik szorosan az illegális migrációhoz és a határvédelemhez, de meg kell említenem, hogy világos legyen, miközben Magyarország védi a schengeni határokat és az Európai Uniót, a GDP-hez képest arányosan a legtöbbet költi az Európai Uniós országok közül azokra a segélyprogramokra, amelyek olyan országokba irányulnak, ahonnan egyébként a migránsok zöme jön. Ezt úgy hívják, hogy Hungary Helps program. Iskolákat, kórházakat építünk, szálláshelyeket építünk, illetőleg olyan beruházásokat támogatunk, amelyeket a helyiek mondanak nekünk, mert a rövid és velős hozzáállásunk az, hogy nem ide kell hozni a bajt, hanem oda kell vinni a segítséget, ahol erre szükség van. A következő hozzászóló Kucik János Zoltán, az országos rendőrfőkapitány helyettese. Öné a szó.
Tisztelt elnök urak, államtitkár úr, tisztelt hölgyeim és uraim! Tisztelettel köszöntöm önöket én is Budapesten. 2015-ben soha nem látott mértékű migrációval állt szemben Magyarország, és komoly kihívás elé állította a magyar rendőrséget is. Ebben az évben több mint 400 000 Magyarország határát illegálisan átlépő személlyel szemben intézkedtek a munkatársaink a schengeni külső határon, vagy pedig az ország melyiségében. Ez a nagyszámú hazánkba érkező illegális migráns adott esetben biztonsági kockázatot is jelentett az ő kezelésük, és 2015-ben sem a határőrizeti infrastruktúra, sem pedig a jogi környezet nem volt alkalmas arra, hogy a munkánkat ilyen nagyszámú biztonsági kockázatot jelentő migráns és embercsempész érkezésénél kezelni tudjuk. Ez volt az oka annak, hogy a déli határon, elsősorban a magyar-szerb határon kerítést, azaz biztonsági határzárat kellett építenünk. A másik pedig, hogy 2016-tól migrációs veszélyhelyzetet hirdetett a kormány, és több olyan jogszabályt is módosított, ami kellett ahhoz, hogy a munkánkat el tudjuk végezni. Az első és legfontosabb az a nemzetközi szabályozás, mégpedig a Schengeni Határellenőrzési Kódex, amely felhatalmazást ad a munkatársaimnak arra, hogy a zöld határon megállítsa azokat, akik illegálisan akarnak Magyarországra és a Schengeni térségbe jutni, hiszen a Schengeni Határellenőrzési Kódex feketén-fehéren leírja, hogy a schengeni határokat kizárólag határátkelő helyeken lehet átlépni. A másik pedig a magyar államhatárról szóló törvény volt, amelyik biztosította azt a lehetőséget a magyar rendőröknek, hogy az ország teljes területéről migrációs veszélyhelyzet idején vissza tudja kísérni a kerítésen túlra azokat, akik jogellenesen érkeztek Magyarország területére. Ahhoz, hogy a rendőrség ezt a feladatot el tudja látni, nem csak a jogi környezet megváltoztatására és a technikai feltételek módosítására volt szükség, hanem munkatársakat is kellett felvenni, hiszen a meglévő létszámhoz indokolt volt 3000 fővel bővíteni a rendőrségnek a létszámát, majd később még 4000 határvadásszal. Tehát ezzel a létszámmal tudjuk azt a biztonságot szavatolni, hogy meg tudjuk állítani a migrációt a határon. Tehát ez a jogi környezet változása, a infrastruktúra kialakítása és a kiképzett munkatársaimnak a szolgálatba vezénylése eredményezte azt, hogy 2015-től egészen 2019-ig nagy mértékben tudtuk csökkenteni a Magyarországba belépő illegális migránsok számát, és akik eljutottak Nyugat-Európába. Elsősorban az arab országokból. Azonban 2019-től újra emelkedett azoknak a száma, akik jogellenesen érkeztek, és átkívánták lépni Magyarország határát és a schengeni külső határt. Eleinte ez a szám átlagosan naponta 50 fő volt, majd 2022-ben eljutottunk odáig, hogy naponta 740, átlagosan naponta 740 intézkedést kellett tenni munkatársaimnak. Ekkor már az egyéves összintézkedés szám közelített a 300 000-hez. Ezért van az, hogyha 2015-től az intézkedések számát összeadjuk, akkor az azt jelenti, hogy több mint 1 millió olyan személlyel intézkedtünk, aki jogellenesen kívánta Magyarország határát átlépni, vagy pedig át is lépte. De ebben az évben, októberben, tehát 2022. októberben volt olyan nap, csak a számok kedvéért, hogy el tudják képzelni, hogy mit jelentett ez a munkatársaimnak, amikor 2300 illegális migráns érkezett egyetlen egy nap alatt, akivel szemben nekünk intézkednünk kellett. De nem csak az illegális migránsok számában történt ez az emelkedés, hanem egyre inkább fel kellett készülnünk arra, hogy a határőrizetet ellátó munkatársaimat támadás éri a biztonsági határzár mellett. Eleinte homokkal, földdarabokkal, majd később kövekkel, botokkal, és ezt követően már lőfegyverekkel, csuzlival, gázsprével és késsel támadtak a határőrizetet ellátó rendőrökre, katonákra vagy pedig határvadászokra. 750 munkatársamat ért támadás a biztonsági határzár mellett. 750 munkatársamat, és 51-en meg is sérültek, és volt olyan kollégám, aki sajnos súlyos sérülést szenvedett. De a határ mellett történt eseményeken kívül, aki a migrációs eseményeket követte, az láthatta, hogy 2022. novemberében már egy bejutott migránscsapat embercsempészekkel közösen száguldozott az M5-ös autópályán, ahol több alkalommal rálőttek az őket követő, egyébként a közlekedési szabályokat betartó rendőrökre, akik követték őket, több alkalommal rájuk lőttek. De a leginkább életet, testi épséget veszélyeztető esemény az 2023. szeptember 20-án volt, amikor a magyar-szerb járőrpáros, egyébként kiváló kapcsolat van a Magyarország és Szerbia rendőri szervei között, naponta közös adategyeztetések és közös szolgálatellátások vannak. A kollégáink éppen közös járőrszolgálatot teljesítettek, amikor sorozatlövő fegyverrel hosszú sorozatot adtak le a munkatársainkra, és nehezen tudtuk őket onnan kimenekíteni úgy, hogy sérülésük ne keletkezzen. Elmondható volt ebben az időszakban, a biztonsági határzár két kerítésből áll, és a két kerítés között van egy út. A két kerítés között tartózkodni az életveszély volt. Oda a munkatársainkat csak sisakba, testvédőfelszereléssel, lövedékálló mellénnyel és pajzsokkal engedjük be a mai napig, mert az életük egyébként veszélyben van. Ez a legszomorúbb és legnagyobb tragédia, amikor a munkatársainkat ér támadás, de az ő munkájukat segítő biztonsági határzárat is számtalanszor megrongálták, annak érdekében, hogy könnyebben bejussanak a schengeni térségbe. Erővágókkal, elektromos, akkumulátoros flexekkel vágják át a kerítést, amiben az elmúlt időszakban 41 millió eurós kárt okoztak, tehát ez a 41 millió eurós kár, ez a karbantartást és a javítási költségeket fedezi. Láthatták a képeken is, hogy nem csak a rendőröket éri támadás, nem csak a biztonsági határzárat vágják át, hanem azokban az autókban is nagyon komoly kár keletkezik, amivel a kollégáim a határon szolgálatot teljesítenek. 373 alkalommal érte támadás a szolgálati gépkocsiinkat, amiket kövekkel, botokkal, vasrudakkal tesznek mozgásképtelenné. Itt is megközelítette az 1 millió eurót a kár, amit okoztak vele. Ez az erőszakos magatartás, amit tapasztalunk az államhatáron, ez sajnos az elmúlt 3 évben kiterjedt a közútjainkra is. Ugyan az illegális migránsok 94%-át meg tudjuk állítani az államhatáron, ezeknek a technikai eszközöknek, jogi felhatalmazásnak és a munkatársaink felkészültségének köszönhetően, azonban vannak, akik átjutnak. És akik átjutnak a határon, őket embercsempészek, sokszor rossz műszaki állapotú autókat, a közlekedési szabályokat teljesen figyelmen kívül hagyva szállítják, gátlástalanul az emberi életet, testi épséget veszélyeztető módon közlekednek. Sajnos ennek a közlekedési morálnak már több halálos áldozata is van. A legsúlyosabb eset az 2021. decemberében történt, ahol 7 halálos áldozata volt ennek a száguldozásnak, amit ott tapasztaltunk. Ahhoz, hogy Magyarországon a közrendet, közbiztonságot fenntartsuk, és számtalan turisztikai szervezet, nemzetközi felmérés alapján továbbra is Magyarország a világ egyik legbiztonságosabb országa lehessen, az illegális és erőszakos bejutást meg kell akadályoznunk. Ehhez 2015-ben eleinte több ezer főt vezényeltünk a magyar-szerb határra, tehát több ezer főt, majd a biztonsági infrastruktúra kialakítását követően, attól függ, hogy éppen adott időszakban mekkora nyomás érte a határt, 500 és 1000 fő közötti rendőr teljesít a mai napig is szolgálatot a biztonsági határzár mellett. De több ország felismerte, hogy segíteni kell Magyarországot ebben, és köszönjük szépen az ő segítségüket. 2020-tól Ausztriából érkeztek rendőrök, akik egyébként 45 000 illegális migráns elfogásában működtek közre. 2021. decemberétől Törökországból érkeztek rendőrök, akik a határátkelőhelyeken teljesítenek szolgálatot, több mint 10 000 illegális migráns feltartóztatásában segítettek. 2021-től Csehországból érkeztek rendőrök, ők több mint 60 000 illegális migráns feltartóztatásában segítettek, 2021. októbertől Szlovákiából több mint 20 000 elfogásban segítettek nekünk. Egyébként a Nyugat-Európába tartó vonatok ellenőrzése mai napig folyamatos. A magyar rendőrség Németországból és Ausztriából érkező rendőrökkel közösen teljesít szolgálatot ezeken a vonatokon. De még egy adatot szeretnék elmondani. 2015-től közel 6000, egészen pontosan 5600 magyar rendőr teljesített szolgálatot a Balkánon és a Frontex műveleteiben, hogy segítséget nyújtsunk azoknak az országoknak, akik Magyarország államhatárától délre helyezkednek el, és ezzel a Magyarországon szolgálatot teljesítő határőrizeti állománynak is segítséget tudunk nyújtani, hogy az ország határtól délebbre, messzebbre meg tudjuk állítani. Köszönöm szépen a figyelmet!
Thank you very much. Mr. Ritvari, at the end of this point, you can answer the questions and speakers. Dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, now I close the applications because we've got more than 33 applications. Now the speakers are following. Please watch the 1.5 minutes. So that's the time of the one speech. After the 2 seconds, the machine automatically switch off the speaker's microphone. The first one is Thomas Lenz from Poland, as a member of the Troika.
you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, European Union face more challenges in the field of protecting the borders than ever. The threatening example of that is politics run by Russia and Belarus. Those two countries organized the illegal immigrant smuggling, and Poland and European border is constantly in danger of the organized attacks. Polish soldiers were killed, yes, and injured on that border. In this difficult situation, the ongoing support of the European Union is crucial for the government of Donald Tusk as well as the Polish people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Griederius Surplis from Lithuania.
Thank you, dear Chair. Dear ladies and gentlemen, first of all, I would like to express my gratitude to the representatives of Hungarian government for your presentations. When in 2015 Hungary erected your physical barrier, it was seriously criticized, but today Lithuania has also erected a similar protection. Finland is building that. So in these extremely turbulent times, we must be vigilant and resolute, protecting the Schengen borders. Strong external borders, resilient to various challenges and threats, are key for EU internal security. The EU should accelerate efforts towards comprehensive, digitalized and well-integrated European border management system and shift to border defense. This process should include consistent and standardized investment into external border infrastructure, including counter-mobility measures, as well as equipping border guards. We face military conflicts around Europe. The climate change threatens even larger numbers of migrants. Without dealing with causes, we will never be able to guarantee our security and care for those millions of people coming. So we have to deal with causes of migration outside Europe, first of all. Instrumentalized migration as a form of a hybrid attack by the hostile regimes of Russia and Belarus in the north of Europe continues to pose a serious threat to our national security and stability. We should revise the EU legal framework and tools to be better equipped in responding to this challenge. We also advocate for strengthening cooperation with NATO, using the existing tools and resources to raise the situational awareness and threat assessment, analyzing patterns and tactics of instrumentalization of migration, strengthening resilience, and reinforcing
Sorry, this is the machine. The next speaker is Pepijn van Hovelingen from Netherlands.
Thank you. As you might know, we had an election last year in the Netherlands, and mass migration was a main issue. And as a result of this election, we now have a government which is very much trying to tackle this issue. And our Secretary of Asylum has announced that she will enforce the most strict policies ever in the Netherlands with regard to mass migration. So you can expect that the Dutch government will also try to control its own borders, and we applaud Germany that they will do the same. They announced it yesterday. We are thankful for Hungary that they try to enforce the controls on the EU borders. And to summarize, we will have a very strict migration policy in the Netherlands the coming years, and we will check our own borders, and in accordance with the Dublin agreements, we will send also migrants back to Belgium and Germany. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Hulusi Akar from Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A comprehensive and sustainable approach to migration management necessitates international, regional, and global cooperation. Turkey is located on migration routes and hosts the largest number of the refugees in the world. Turkey effectively combats illegal migration and the smuggling of migrants. In the last 2 years, Turkey has caught more than 20,000 immigrant smugglers and 400,000 irregular immigrants. Turkey has also continued to take all measures against foreign terrorist fighters, namely Daesh, and neutralized more than 4,500 of them. In addition, we have deported more than 10,000 suspected foreign terrorist fighters and prevented more than 120,000 of the FTFs from entering our country and region. Turkey has fulfilled its obligations under the Turkey-EU Statement on Migration signed in 2016, closing the Aegean route to prevent the loss of lives. Turkey expects the EU to fulfill its commitments and take concrete steps, particularly on visa liberalization, the accession process, and the upgrading of the customs union. Given the geographical and strategic location of Turkey, it's important to recall that the protection of the EU's external borders and the fight against illegal migration and terrorism begin at the Turkish borders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Glenn Bedingfield from Malta.
Thank you. Maltese people are acutely aware of the challenges posed by illegal migration and the protection of our shared and external borders. Malta believes that a broad and fair approach is essential, one that balances security with compassion, safeguarding our borders while upholding human dignity and international obligations. Protecting the EU's external borders requires enhanced cooperation, solidarity, resource, and most of all, burden sharing across all member states. Europe must act decisively to dismantle human trafficking networks and secure our borders, but at the same time, a sustainable solution to migration involves addressing the root causes such as conflict, poverty, and climate change in the countries of origin, and we ought to commit to reinforcing partnerships with third countries to address this problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is from Finland, Jukka Kopra.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, dear friends. We as parliamentarians, we have to do everything to protect the security and legitimacy of European Union. And protecting our borders, containing the situation in our borders is one vital task in this task we have to maintain security and legitimacy of the Union. Now, illegal immigration, as we have heard, is one of the imminent threats at the moment to these goals we have to keep up. And also, it is one of the key challenges for us too. Now, this imminent illegal immigration challenge has to be addressed seriously and as fast as possible. And as we have heard, some countries are doing more than their share to protect the security and contain the situation at the moment. And may I remind you that Finland also has had to close its eastern border towards Russia to prevent this build-up of a new illegal route to Europe from Far East and Middle East. And we have signs that this build-up of the instrumentalized migration route from Russia is clearly supported by the Russian government. Now, what we have heard from the keynote speakers, I fully support the ideas that we should do more. We should give finance to those countries who protect the outside border of the EU and also change European legislation so that this very hard task would be easier. Also, I would appreciate that we would sort of re-evaluate and restructure the formament of Frontex organization so that their task would be more to help us prevent the
Thank you very much. Nicolas Pascal de la Parte.
Thank you very much. I think that we agree that migration is one of the most important issues for all our countries and for the European Union as such. It is actually an essential issue. But protecting our borders, need as it be, is not only it's only part of the solution. We have to have a multi-layer approach to migration because migration as such is not a threat. Could be even an opportunity for everybody if it is good regulated through the regular channels. Could be a good opportunity and a benefit for the countries of origin, for the countries of transit, and for the countries of destination. Our people is waiting for us to offer solutions that we select the proper immigrants that could be integrated in our labor market and in our societies. Because we have to be aware that our demographic pyramid is as it is, and we will need migrants in the near future, but the right migrants through the legal channels. And keep in mind one thing, development in third world countries and African countries will mean in the near future more migrants to Europe, more pressure, not less. When a country reaches some degree of economic development, their citizens emigrate abroad better and in bigger numbers than when it is a real poor country. It's a real poor country, the immigration is within Africa and the neighboring countries. But when a country is developing, it's sending people abroad. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Hristo Kazdziev from Bulgaria.
Dear colleagues, the tackling of illegal migration is a joint effort that we have to make, all of us, fighting the illegal entrance within the European Union. Several facts. The land border between Bulgaria and Turkey is the biggest on the Euro-Mediterranean land route. The Kapitán Andreevu Czech border crossing is the busiest in Europe. And for the last several years, more than 6 police officers lost their lives fighting with traffickers. With that in mind, we've managed to achieve a lot of measures, including smart border control, and with the cooperation with the Turkish authorities, we've established more than 70% of diminishment of attempts to enter the European Union since the last year. With the cooperation with the Romanian and with the Greek authorities, we've managed to cope more than 80% of internal crossing between our countries. So by now, the Eastern Mediterranean route is not that popular as it was several years ago. But having said that, the continuation of the postponement of European and of Bulgarian and Romanian land accession to Schengen is hurting not the migration and the illegal migrants, it's hurting European economy and it's hurting European citizens, and that must stop, and we have to enter Schengen area together and to form our own economic space. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Dimitrios Kairidis from Greek.
Thank you. I speak to you not only as a member head of the Greek delegation, a country that is at the forefront of the problem of illegal migration, but as a former minister of migration. And in that capacity, let me assure you that Turkey does not implement the 2016 joint statements. Since 2019, the last 5 years, there has been not a single return of an asylum seeker from Greece back to Turkey. And there are all sorts of other problems. We welcome the visa facilitation. We welcome the visa facilitation for Turkish citizens and the Turkish visitors coming to Greece as a result, a program that we introduced a few months ago. On top of that, we have the instrumentalization of migration from the Turkish authorities back in March 2022 when you were Minister of Defense. Now, we need a balanced approach. We need more to do with protecting the border, more returns, more cooperation against smuggling, but we also need legal pathways to migration according to our needs and priorities and choices. And as far as Hungary is concerned, it's good to hear all this, but to a big extent, this is all irrelevant for the Greek experience. Irrelevant. And it is irrelevant because Hungary is a landlocked country. It is easy to patrol the land and erect fences. What do you do with the sea? Greece has 16,000 kilometers of a coastline. Where does the protecting border stop and protecting human life begins? So the problem is much more complicated, much more complex than the simplicities and the simple rhetoric that we have heard, I'm afraid, from our Hungarian colleagues. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Pavle Arsoski from Macedonia.
Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues,
the migration pressure at the borders along the Western Balkan routes is still present. I still remember September 2015 and outbreak of the refugee wave from Greece to our southern border, when I, as a general commander of the army, deployed the very first time army units in support to border police to deal and manage with the situation. Now we are 2024, the state of emergency is still there, and our soldiers are still there. From refugee crisis, from Syria mostly, through months and years, it evolved into migrant crisis. This non-military threat exposed all countries along the Western Balkan route and Central Europe, and obviously showed defiances in crisis management. The reaction of EU by deploying Frontex to North Macedonia was obviously a right call. Frontex established very successful operational framework together with Macedonian law enforcement and army units on our border to Greece. 100 plus Frontex police officers are constantly present and effective, and we are very grateful to all countries, Hungary among them, which contribute to this mission. The key goal of the state is focused in two directions. One is to have human approach, respecting all human rights, and on the other hand, to preserve the safety of our citizens and the state. North Macedonia is systematically involved in the process of finding an answer within the framework of the European global approach to dealing with the regular and irregular migration. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Rafael Damián Lemus from España.
Gracias. Solamente en el año 2024, en lo que llevamos de 2024, en España han llegado en torno a 24.898 personas inmigrantes. En España sabemos en este momento lo que significa sufrir la llegada masiva de inmigrantes. Este debate es necesario en la Unión Europea, pero es necesario el debate con aptitud y, sobre todo, con legitimidad, con coherencia y con verdad. Según Frontex, la Agencia Fronteriza y Guardia Costera Europea, Rusia está utilizando la inmigración como un arma en un juego de influencias y presión. Según expertos, grupos de mercenarios, entre los que se incluye el grupo Wagner, han estado alimentando el fenómeno migratorio mediante el aumento de la inestabilidad y la violencia en determinadas partes de África, moviendo a dichos inmigrantes hacia las fronteras y apoyando a los traficantes de estas personas en la zona. Miren, señorías, lo que no se puede es utilizar la inmigración ilegal para hacer política, que es lo que están haciendo algunos partidos políticos en Europa. En España, que somos un país ahora mismo receptor masivamente de inmigrantes, no sentimos la inmigración ilegal como una amenaza terrorista y sabemos de amenazas terroristas en España. Ahora bien, que no nos venga con esos discursos para conseguir resultados partidistas. Nada más, gracias.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Gianlacomo Calconini from Italy.
Thank you, Chairman. The immigration issue is probably one of the most important challenges for the Union. And first of all, we have to tell the truth to ourselves. Mistakes and failures are more than success on this issue. If we are not able to defend our borders, our land, and if the trade immigrants is managed by criminal organizations, something is not right. We cannot accept that women, children, and men have to pay thousands of euros to hope a better future crossing the Mediterranean. And it doesn't always happen. Often we have talking about the right not to emigrate, and from here we have to start. It's good that Ursula von der Leyen announced a commissioner for the Mediterranean, but we still have a lot to do. In Italy, we think that Africa is an important key, and for us, collaboration with the countries of this continent is the future. That's because our government announced the Mattei Plan for concrete growth in Africa. Healthcare, agriculture, water, energy are just some of the topics that we want to work with African friends. Many non-European countries have already been in Africa, but it's not too late for us. Italy Italy is in the front for this project, but we believe that with Europe countries at our side, we can do it better for us. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Georgita Mindruta from Romania.
Thank you, Chairman. Dear friends, I would like to start by thanking our Hungarian colleagues for organizing this conference. And Romania is actively engaged in the regional cooperation platform that tackles migration, all of root issues together with the Commission, Austria, Bulgaria, Hungary, Greece, and Slovakia. In addition to this, we have implemented joint compensatory measures in view of lifting the land borders control at the Romania-Bulgaria and Romania-Hungary land borders, such as joint operations for prevention and detection of cross-border crime, fight against illegal migration, joint patrols in border areas, joint risk analysis, and operational situation analysis in the adjacent border areas, and real-time exchange of information. In addition, we have efficiently applied Dublin regulation and have a 79% transfer rate of third country nationals. Well, Romania welcomes the joint implementation plan presented by the Commission on 12th of June 2024 that offers the necessary guidance and support for the implementation of the Pact on Migration and Asylum. For the elaboration of the national implementation plan, we have put in place at national level an interinstitutional coordination mechanism. Nevertheless, we need to continue to fight against migrant smuggling, including by further consolidating the Global Alliance Against Migrant Smuggling, launched at the conference on 28th of November 2023. Last but not least, completing the accession to the Schengen area by lifting the controls at the land borders is very important for us. And I take this opportunity to thank you for including this priority in your presidency program. And we are looking forward for your continued support in the following months for this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Marina Pende, Bosnia and Herzegovina.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Illegal migration and human trafficking are security issues for every country. Because of that, BiH, Bosnia and Herzegovina, give full support to every country in protection of their borders from all threats, as well as from illegal migration that can have negative internal influence on security. Having in mind that South European countries or Balkans countries, as you say, surrounded by EU member states, we expect closer and much more fruitful cooperation with the European Union in protecting of Bosnia and Herzegovina from illegal migration and human trafficking. However, it is maybe even better to work on prevention and on proactive action in order to prevent influx from the illegal migration countries and in order to help in strengthening of democracy in those countries. I see illegal migration like asymmetric threats. Because of that, prevention, proaction must be our global goal in the European Union. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Katya Chilosini from Georgia.
Dear colleagues, protecting external borders and combating illegal migration is an increasingly important aspect of international security and stability. Since the introduction of the visa-free regime, the government of Georgia has introduced a number of measures to meet these challenges that we are facing from different aspects. What we did was that we have adopted the strategy for the integrated borders management, and the unified risk analysis systems was established in Georgia. Also, we started closer cooperation with the European Border and Coast Guard Agency to have a better access to protect our citizens from illegal migration and also to protect the border of Georgia from different illegal immigrants. So as you know, my country is 20% of the country is occupied by Russia, and of course we have border security challenges as well as the migration challenges. With the granting Georgia candidate status, we are very much looking forward to open the accession talks and to ensure that the security and immigration aspects are part of our future cooperation as well. And I believe that with the joint efforts, we can do much to ensure stability, security, and better migrant control within Europe and next to the Europe. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Christine Schwarz-Fuchs from Österreich.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We believe the new Asylum and Migration Pact represents a crucial step forward. Austria, in particular, suffers significantly from the unequal distribution of migration, with the second highest per capita share in the EU after Cyprus in 2023. An effective implementation of the pact is vital to uphold our values and our security. In addition to the Asylum and Migration Pact, it is crucial that we develop new solutions to prevent irregular migration. To address this challenge effectively, we must establish long-term partnerships with key countries along migration routes, particularly in North Africa. These partnerships will help us build sustainable frameworks to manage migration at its source. We also need to strengthen and adapt the concept of safe third countries, ensuring it meets today's realities. Equally important is bolstering the EU's return policy, including the creation of return hubs in third countries to streamline and facilitate the return process. By working together and reinforce these measures, we can achieve a fairer, a more secure and a sustainable migration system. Our goals are clear: strengthen border protection, ensure fairer distribution of asylum seekers, and work towards long-term solutions, including addressing the root causes of migration. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Cosmo Adrian Feliciani from Romania.
Tisztelt elnök úr, tisztelt képviselőtársak! Először is szeretném megköszönni ennek a kiemelkedően fontos konferenciának megrendezését. A mai téma rendkívüli jelentőséggel bír a jelenlegi helyzetben. Románia továbbra is elkötelezett az Európai Unió külső határainak fokozott védelme mellett. Ennek érdekében idén márciusban megállapodtunk az Európai Bizottsággal, hogy kiterjesztjük a szerb határon már működő kísérleti projektet egy együttműködési keret és akcióterv alapján. Ez a pilotprojekt már kézzelfogható eredményeket hozott, és számos jó gyakorlatot eredményezett. Az illegális migráció áramlások a szerb határon szinte nullára csökkentek, és terveink szerint ezeket az eljárásokat a többi külső határunkra is kiterjesztjük. Határvédelmi infrastruktúránk készen áll a váratlan válság kezelésére, ahogyan az a 2024-es schengeni állapotjelentésben is szerepel. A készenleti képség kapcsán támogattuk a migrációs és menekült paktum elfogadását, és úgy véljük, hogy annak elfogadása egy fontos lépés a helyes irányba. A paktum új elkötelezés biztosít a tagállamoknak az illegális migráció elleni küzdelmében. Köszönöm szépen.
Nagyon szépen köszönöm. The next speaker is José Luis Carnetro from Portugal.
The way we treat immigrants is our most important high watermark of our humanitarian common values. Regulated migrations on the origin, in the transit and in the destiny, and promote the sustainable development in the origin countries is the right way. It's the reason why Portugal is committed with the Pact for Migration of the United Nations and with the new Pact for Migration and Asylum of the European Union. This is the possible commitment between solidarity and responsibility. We are committed with the ambition of the reinforcement of the Frontex capacities to regulate the border movements, and we are integrated in common efforts, humanitarian efforts in the Mediterranean. Our great need is the enhancing of our common frame and network to promote the good integration in our cultures and societies. Coexistence is not the integration. Coexistence of different cultures is different of social and cultural integration. We can't forget the Europeans represented almost 20% of the world population until 1950, and we will represent just 7% until 2050. We need the regulated migration to promote rejuvenation and to support the social and economic functions of the state. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Darko Klasić from Croatia.
Hvala lijepo, poštovani predsjedavajući, uvažene kolegice i kolege zastupnici. Obzirom da Hrvatska upravlja najduljom vanjskom kopnenom granicom u Europi i da se nalazi na aktivnoj zapadno-balkanskoj migracijskoj ruti, u fokusu je zaštita vanjske granice. Hrvatska granica čuva 6700 graničnih i još nekoliko tisuća interventnih policajaca, što je 5 puta više od ukupnog sastava Frontexa. Iako je tijekom 2024. zabilježen određen pad pritiska na zapadno-balkanskoj ruti, što je svakako pozitivno, ipak je nepovoljno stanje u zemljama Zapadnog Balkana po pitanju nezakonitih migracija imalo direktan učinak na hrvatsku granicu. Nakon ciljanih operativnih mjera Srbije na granici s Mađarskom, pritisak na srpsko-mađarsku granicu reduciran je na čak 99%, ali je preusmjeren preko Bosne i Hercegovine na hrvatsku granicu. To jasno ukazuje da je potrebno uložiti značajne napore na kontroli nezakonitih prelazaka iz Srbije u Bosnu i Hercegovinu. Europska unija i Srbija nedavno su potpisale zato statusni sporazum između Frontexa i Srbije, za koji se nadamo da će omogućiti raspoređivanje stalnih snaga Frontexa na kritične točke na granici Srbije i Bosne i Hercegovine. Hrvatska policija je ove godine do 25. srpnja spriječila preko 69.726 nezakonitih migranata, što je povećanje od 38% u odnosu na 2023. godinu. 80% ih je zatražilo azil, pri čemu su najbrojniji državljani Sirije, Turske, Rusije, Afganistana i Sirije. Uz to naglašavamo kako je 40% migranata u Hrvatskoj prethodno pristiglo na područje Zapadnog Balkana temeljem bezviznog režima Srbije i Bosne i Hercegovine. Ti migranti u navedene zemlje dolaze turističkim zrakoplovima, nakon čega svoj put nastavljaju tako da nezakonito pokušavaju prijeći granicu. Stoga Republika Hrvatska zalaže se za usklađivanje viznih politika zemalja Zapadnog Balkana.
Unfortunately, the machine switched off. Sorry. The next speaker is Lazaros Chadaridis from Greek.
Thank you very much, dear hosts, dear colleagues. In the volatile world we live in, Greece, as a country responsible for the protection of its own borders, as well as the borders of the European Union, continues to underline that migration cannot be and should not be considered as a national issue. Thus, frontline member states should not bear a disproportionate burden and need to feel, especially in times of crisis, the security of their partners' mandatory solidarity, either as individuals or in financial resources. This disproportionate burden is vividly reflected in numbers. Since 2015, the heroic Greek Coast Guard has rescued more than 240,000 migrants in search and rescue incidents. The pressing situation on the Eastern Mediterranean migratory route, where in the first 7 months of 2024 there was an increase of 2,962% in migratory flows, only in Crete, from eastern Libya. In addition to the thousands coming from Turkey, we consider that it requires an intensification of actions through a triple approach. Firstly, we need a better analysis of the root causes of illegal migration in order to ensure a targeted prevention. Secondly, we need a more effective external border surveillance combined with encouragement of returns to the countries of origin of those who are not entitled to asylum. And thirdly, the creation or broadening of the legal pathways for labor mobility and migration to fill the labor market gaps of European economies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Pierre-Romain Thionni from Espagne.
Monsieur le Président, chers collègues, vous l'avez rappelé en introduction, la protection des frontières extérieures est prévue par le Code Schengen. C'est même un devoir et un principe fondamental pour chaque État membre. La politique migratoire hongroise ne devrait de ce point de vue pas être considérée comme une exception, mais comme la normalité en Europe. Les choses sont en train de changer. Hier, le chancelier allemand Olaf Scholz a affirmé que l'Allemagne allait désormais refouler les clandestins à ses frontières. Des gouvernements sociaux-démocrates, comme au Danemark, adoptent des politiques migratoires très strictes. L'Europe, et c'est une bonne chose, fait le choix de refermer la parenthèse dangereuse d'ouverture des frontières. C'est une bonne chose pour l'Europe, pour la sécurité de nos nations et la cohésion de nos peuples. C'est une bonne chose pour résister aux provocations géopolitiques à l'est de notre continent. Et c'est une bonne chose aussi pour l'humanité. Car ce ne sont pas les frontières contrôlées qui créent les déplacements, les tragédies, les accidents en Méditerranée ou en Égée. Ce sont les frontières ouvertes, les politiques laxistes qui provoquent les drames. Voilà dans quel sens nous devons travailler, modifier les règles de l'Union européenne et notamment les règles de Frontex afin de permettre le refoulement et de raccompagner les embarcations illégales loin des côtes européennes. En agissant ainsi, nous ferons preuve d'humanité tout en préservant nos souverainetés. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. Sorry, of course, Mr. Tony from European Parliament. The next speaker is Loïc Hervé from France.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Mes chers collègues, les discussions de ce matin montrent combien cette question de la gestion des migrations est un défi pour nous tous, face à la pression migratoire que nous connaissons, mais également des opinions publiques qui attendent des résultats de notre part. En humaniste, la situation de la Méditerranée et la semaine dernière en Manche ne peuvent nous laisser indifférents. Et ces situations exigent de nous un contrôle bien plus fort à l'ensemble des frontières extérieures de l'Union. La pression migratoire sur l'Union reste forte en raison notamment des foyers de tension dans le monde. Comme réponse, l'adoption en mai dernier du paquet Asile et Immigration reste un beau succès. Nous pouvons faire plus et mieux en matière de lutte contre les réseaux de passeurs ou de respect des droits fondamentaux. Le travail et la coordination des forces de police nationales et des agents de Frontex restent source de tensions. Il faut ainsi se féliciter du triplement des moyens de Frontex à la frontière bulgare. La présidente von der Leyen propose de tripler le nombre de gardes-frontières et de gardes-côtes. Le budget de Frontex a beau être important, ce n'est pas une agence très attractive. Il faudra ainsi améliorer l'efficacité des opérations grâce à des équipements de pointe et l'ampleur de la tâche sera démultipliée par les élargissements à venir. Le chantier devant nous est immense. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is from Portuguese, Paulo Pisco.
Thank you, Chairman. The management of migration flows are one of the most complex challenges of our times. But we must not make any concessions to populisms and security policies where empathy and respect for human dignity are absent, as we have seen in that horrible video that has been shown to us for internal propaganda, as it has been the practice of Hungarian authorities in dealing with migration. I've been in Roscoe, the detention center, and I've known about what I'm talking about, and I also learned that one thing is the reality and the other thing is what Hungarian authorities say. Human rights, humanism, solidarity are in the base of our common identity, built since the beginning of this beautiful project that is the European Union. Therefore, it's so fundamental to defend our external borders and fight smugglers and to create legal pathways for migration as to defend our common values. If we don't do it, we'll be destroying our identity and the true nature of the European Union. In this context, I would like to ask to the Hungarian presidency, what do you mean when you say that you are going to find innovative solutions for rules on asylum, and if they will respect human rights and human dignity? And once Hungary only admitted 45 requests of asylum in 2023, the lowest number in the European Union, how will the country show its solidarity towards all other member states of the European Union? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Alekos Trifonidis from Cyprus.
Excellencies, dear colleagues, illegal migration is a European challenge that must be met with a European solution. Regarding Cyprus, it should be highlighted that over the past 7 years, my country has consistently been the member state with the highest number of applications for international protection in relation to its population. As we speak, the proportion of applicants and beneficiaries for international protection in Cyprus corresponds to 5% of the country's population. There is no doubt that this situation is caused by Turkey's provocative practice of instrumentalization of migration. Herds of evidence prove that the vast majority of irregular migrants to Cyprus come from sub-Saharan countries following a specific route, fly from their countries of origin to Istanbul, then to Timbu airport in the occupied by Turkey area of Cyprus, from where smugglers transfer them from the Green Line to the free areas, which are under the effective control of the Republic of Cyprus. Therefore, we should focus on practical solutions and strict measures. At the point we call for the EU consider to reevaluation of the situation in Syria to enable the voluntary return to Syrian refugees. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Andronius Azubalis from Lithuania.
Dear colleagues, first of all, the Pact on Migration and Asylum, which entered into force this year, in my opinion, is already outdated. Because this legal act already foresees the corresponding numbers of migrants and for member states introduces a flavored obligation, accept certain number of migrants or pay. I think here we have a problem with our sovereignty, with our will of our citizens. And the last remark, we should also discuss about the Frontex future. I don't know what this organization is doing, actually. The budget is a huge one, but in most cases, this organization acts as a simply observers, or in the best case, as a rescue organization. But it's nothing has to do with the security of our EU borders. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The next speaker is Aylem Ertuğrul from Turkey.
Dear participants, due to its geopolitical position, Turkey has been a bridge between underdeveloped countries and wealthy Western nations, and this has led irregular migrants to use Turkey as a transit route. The increasing migration also jeopardizes border security. Along with illegal migration, there has been a rise in drug and arms trafficking and terrorist infiltration, as well as other elements that could threaten national security. Although we have taken serious measures in recent years to enhance our border security, the increase in irregular migration has been greater. However, border security or prevention of illegal migration cannot be ensured solely through the physical and military measures taken by a single country along its border. The key lies in cooperation and burden sharing with the country from which migration originates. Dear participants, it must be acknowledged that Turkey is the country hosting the largest number of migrants and refugees in the European region. Turkey spends a substantial amount of resources on healthcare, education, nutrition, accommodation for these migrants. Turkey has shown great efforts on preventing the loss of lives of refugees in the Aegean Sea. But Greece is pushing back refugees to Aegean Sea and causing great amounts of life losses in the Aegean region. It must be known that these facts are clear by eyewitnesses and video recordings. In light of this unsustainable situation, I believe that Turkey should receive more economic support from the European Union for these services. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Darko Jovanovic from Serbia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, dear colleagues. Ever since the first wave of illegal migration from the Middle East, Africa, and Asia, and the appearance of the Western Balkans route, the Republic of Serbia has been actively involved in all processes aimed at preventing mass illegal crossings of its own borders and those of neighboring countries, especially EU members. The result of those activities are truly impressive. In the first half of 2024, the number of illegal crossings at the EU's internal borders was reduced by 1/3. Hence, the Republic of Serbia assessment by the EU as a highly reliable partner. However, it's also necessary to emphasize that there is no effective control of the state border of the Republic of Serbia with the Republic of North Macedonia and the Republic of Albania in the territory of the southern Serbian province of Kosovo and Metohija, which, according to the UN Security Council Resolution 1244, is under the administration and supervision of international forces, KFOR and ULEX. Therefore, the Republic of Serbia deploys its military and police force in the specified safety ground zone on the administrative line with Kosovo and Metohija in order to prevent illegal migration flow to the EU and protect the EU from other forms of criminal activity as well. In these matters, as in all others, there must be respect for the internationally recognized and defined borders and territorial integrity of the Republic of Serbia, which includes the southern province of Kosovo and Metohija. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mustafa Kambey from Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The fight against illegal migration, irregular border crossing, and the smuggling of migrants has become one of the most important issues on the agenda of almost all states and international organizations. In order to address the root causes of the migration influx, it is necessary to develop a disciplinary and humanitarian approach and establish coordination mechanisms. Ensuring peace, stability, prosperity, and sustainable development in the country of origin and providing humanitarian and developmental assistance in a coordinated manner are essential. Burden and responsibility sharing with the countries most affected by irregular migratory movement is crucial. Due to political instability, poor governance, poverty, armed and ethnic conflicts, and economic difficulties in the region, Turkey has long been under severe migratory pressure. As the pressure increases day by day, Turkey has not have the capacity to absorb and further influx of migrants. Turkey is open any kind of cooperation in the field of managing irregular migration and combating smuggling of migrants. Regarding Syrian migrants, we continue our efforts to create, educate, and sustainable conditions on the ground to ensure voluntary returns in a safe and dignified manner. We expect the EU to work with us, especially finding infrastructure projects, creating employment opportunities through small-scale projects, and providing cost allowance for returns.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Tom Vejdik from Luxembourg.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dear colleagues, to protect our borders, we can put fences, do pushbacks, give Frontex more money and power. But all these measures are only fighting symptoms. The most effective border control is to remove any incentive for people to come to Europe, either for economic gains, including benefiting from our welfare system or engaging in criminal activities. For far too long, some countries, mostly from Western Europe, made Europe look like a honeypot and soft on crime. Some of these countries, such as Sweden, Denmark, and also the Netherlands, have learned from their mistakes, or rather those politicians responsible have been voted out of power. As a consequence, numbers have dramatically decreased. For effective border control, we must restrict the benefits to asylum seekers to in-kind benefits. We cannot host them in better accommodation than our own citizens in need. We need to accelerate the asylum procedure. We must deny asylum to those committing crimes and convict and deport them fast. All these measures will remove the incentives for economic and criminal migrants, and we must communicate them loudly and clearly. Only the true refugees will still come, as they seek different things. They seek safety, stability, and our protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Rainer Semmet from Germany.
Sehr geehrter Herr Vorsitzender, liebe Kolleginnen und Kollegen! Illegale Migration ist seit 10 Jahren ein großes Problem in der EU und es verstärkt sich immer mehr. Das führt zu einem Vertrauensverlust in die Institutionen und in die Stärkung extremer Parteien, die genau dieses Problem sehr massiv ansprechen. Allerdings müssen wir auch zugeben, dass es immer schwerer wird, zumindest kann ich das für Deutschland sagen, den Zustrom an Migration in die Gesellschaft zu integrieren und dass wir dabei sind, unsere eigene Bevölkerung in diesem Zusammenhang zu verlieren. Wir brauchen eine schnellstmögliche Implementierung der GEAS-Reform. Alle Mitglieder müssen sich daran halten, wir können nur gemeinsam agieren. Als Einzelne wird das nicht möglich sein. Alternative, auch das wird diskutiert mittlerweile, ist eine Notstandserklärung, die völliges EU-Recht außer Kraft setzen würde. Das kann nicht das Ziel sein. Wir brauchen stärkere Binnenkontrollen. Das heißt, Deutschland hat gerade welche eingeführt, aus genau den Gründen, die ich genannt habe, weil die Zunahme an Migration exorbitant ist und dass insbesondere die illegale Migration, die nichts mit Asyl zu tun hat, zugenommen hat. Wir werden das zunächst mal für 6 Monate machen und dann werden wir sehen, wie wir weiter verfahren können. Eine bessere Zusammenarbeit der Mitgliedstaaten ist notwendig, zum Beispiel eine Liste direkt Abgewiesener oder die Abschiebung, anstatt bei Wiedereinreise ein neues Verfahren anzuleiten. Einführung eines Drittstaatenmodells ist auch bereits angesprochen worden, ist eine Möglichkeit. Ich möchte sagen, wir sind nicht gegen Asyl, aber wenn wir die Kontrolle über die Migration verlieren, dann werden wir immense Probleme bekommen. Dankeschön.
Thank you very much. Next speaker from Suomi, Anne Kalmari.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Finland has 1,300 kilometers common border with Russia. Finland has taken part of the national agreements of human rights and European rules. That's crystal clear. Still, we had to close our border from Russia. The Russia sends people over the border as a part of the hybrid attack against Finland. This is organized by smugglers, like, for example, in Hungary. It's not the same than receive normal asylum seekers. We had to react against hybrid attacks. I ask for your understanding. I also call for joint actions at all our European external borders. Dear colleagues, when I was young, I was afraid to wake up my father because 1 second he was ready to take a rifle and defend Finland's border. His 3 brothers died in the war, and the father got eternal traumas. The war against the Soviet Union demanded expensive ransom, but we won our independence alone. Dear colleagues from every country, now Europe must be united and no one can be left alone again to defend the external border, not even in the case of hybrid war or illegal smugglers.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Dagmar Belakovic from Österreich.
Ja, vielen herzlichen Dank. Zunächst einmal Dank und Anerkennung an Ungarn dafür, dass sie den Außengrenzschutz wirklich ernst genommen haben und das machen, was eigentlich alle Länder mit Außengrenzen machen sollten, nämlich tatsächlich schützen. Die Asylverfahren außerhalb der EU zu implementieren, das ist etwas, was wir massiv unterstützen. Und gerade Österreich ist ja wahnsinnig ausgesetzt gewesen, diesem Migrationsdruck. Der Migrationspakt ist ein verzweifelter Versuch der EU, Migranten zu verteilen. Aber in Wahrheit ist es eine weitere Verwaltung der Migration. Aber was es braucht in der EU ist ein Migrationsstopp. Wir werden nicht umhin kommen, die Außengrenzen zu schließen und hier keine weitere illegale Migration mehr zuzulassen. Denn sonst verlieren wir die eigene Bevölkerung. Der Schutz der eigenen Bevölkerung muss an erster Stelle stehen. Mit diesem Migrationsdruck sind gekommen Terror, es ist gekommen Gewalt, es ist etwas passiert, es ist gekippt in der eigenen Bevölkerung, sozusagen die Hilfestellung zu geben an die sogenannten Schutzsuchenden. Daher braucht es, glaube ich, zum Schutz von uns allen und von unseren Bürgerinnen Außengrenzen schließen mit Zäunen, aber auch mit Pushbacks. Das braucht es ganz, ganz dringend und es braucht eine große Anzahl an Rückführungen, die tatsächliche Rückführungen sind, nicht zwischen einzelnen EU-Ländern, denn man kann nicht davon ausgehen und man kann es auch gar nicht verlangen, dass Migranten in einem Land bleiben. Auch die werden sich wieder weiter bewegen.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Anna Pic from France.
Merci. La semaine dernière, encore, une embarcation de 65 migrants a fait naufrage dans la Manche, non loin de ma circonscription. Chaque jour en mer, des tragédies se déroulent. Si les organisations criminelles portent indéniablement une lourde responsabilité dans ces drames, il est impossible de détourner le regard des défaillances des politiques des États européens. Ces hommes et ces femmes, souvent accompagnés d'enfants, fuient la guerre et la misère au péril de leur vie. Les crises politiques, les guerres, le terrorisme, mais aussi le dérèglement climatique poussent les gens sur la route et ces déplacements ne s'arrêteront pas avec des murs et des barbelés. Nous devons avoir une véritable réponse humaniste qui respecte le droit international et le droit d'asile. Nous devons agir pour que les moyens soient mis dans la lutte contre le crime organisé et le trafic d'êtres humains, mais nous ne pouvons pas repousser ces hommes et ces femmes en occultant les droits humains et en confiant notre tranquillité à des autocrates. Nombre de pays européens font face à un déficit démographique qui met en difficulté leur tissu économique et la stabilité de leurs systèmes sociaux. Nous devons avoir une politique qui réponde à tous ces enjeux et non une externalisation de la question migratoire et des déplacements de population. Merci.
Thank you very much. Last one, Gerard Krauchwer from Ireland.
Dear friends, a lot of talk about borders, border protection. You can build the walls as high as you like. You can do anything you want. The only thing you'll do by building walls and borders is you will have more violence like what we saw in the video a little time ago. I agree with my colleague from Latvia. We must put in the root cause, treat the root cause and keep them in their homes. The Dublin Accord. Will somebody explain to me how a little island like Ireland in the northwest part of Europe with no land border anywhere in Europe finishes up with 20,000 applicants for migration? How does that happen? Is the Dublin Accord dead? Should we finally say there is no Dublin Accord? I have tremendous sympathy for my colleagues who live along the Mediterranean. I've gone out there at the request of the Italian government to see the trouble they have, and my sympathies are with them. Treat the root cause and you may start to solve the migration problem, but unless you do that, all we're going to see is higher walls and more violence and more people struggling to get into the Europe that we love. So let's try and work together towards finding a solution to the root cause. And the talk of borders, I'm horrified. A European, I thought that Europe was to be open for all of us. But clearly, we've got to protect the borders. We are the authors of our own problems. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now, Mr. Etwari, you can answer for the questions, problems, and so on. Please come here for the
Tisztelt elnök úr, tisztelt hölgyeim és uraim! Nagyon köszönöm mindenkinek a hozzászólását. Valóban itt volt Európa minden részéből képviselő, minden ország álláspontját megismerhettük, valószínűleg nem először és nem utoljára, hiszen ez a téma valószínűleg többször is már itt sorra került, és még valószínűleg fog a következő időkben is. Egy olyan kérdéssel állunk szemben az illegális migráció kapcsán, ami lassan egy évtizede van velünk súlyosabban. Itt van évtizedek óta, de a 2015-ös nagy hullám és nagy válság óta lassan egy évtized eltelt. Egyetlen egy országból, egyetlen egy felszólaló, egyetlen egy intézménytől, egyetlen egy politikai csoporttól felszólaló sem mondta azt, hogy ebben az egy évtizedben a problémát megoldottuk. Senki sem mondta azt, hogy ez a probléma megszűnt. Senki sem mondta azt, hogy megtaláltuk a jó irányt, a probléma csökken, csak ebbe az irányba kell tovább haladni. Pedig eltelt egy évtized. És egy évtized után még mindig ugyanazokat a kérdéseket tesszük föl, egy évtized után ugyanúgy beszélünk erről a problémáról, mint 2015-ben. Ez nekem azt mutatja, hogy ez a probléma nem lett megoldva. Ez a probléma ugyanúgy létezik, mint 2015-ben, és azt is mutatja számomra, nyilván mindenkinek lehet saját véleménye, de számomra azt mutatja, hogy az Európai Unió nem találta meg a jó irányt, hanem új irányra van szükség. Ha megtalálta volna a jó irányt, akkor a felszólalók egy jó része csak annyit mondott volna, ebbe az irányba kell tovább menni. És nem arról beszélt volna, hogy ez a probléma a mindennapjainkat meghatározza. A felszállásokból kiderült, minden országban téma. Minden országban kritikus, vezető téma az illegális migráció, pedig 10 évünk lett volna valamilyen irányba, a megoldás irányába elmozdulni. Számomra pozitívan meglepő volt, hogy milyen sokan beszéltek a külső határvédelem mellett. Milyen sokan mondták el, sőt azt mondom szinte a többség, hogy igenis a külső határokat meg kell védeni az Unióban. Számomra meglepő országokból is. Úgyhogy már csak az a kérdés számomra, mint a magyar kormány egyik államtitkára számára, hogyha azok, akiket az emberek választanak, akik a népképviselők, akik itt ülnek most a magyar parlamentben, a saját országok álláspontját, amikor elmondják, akkor ők is azt mondják, hogy a külső határokat kell megvédeni, akkor mégis ki bünteti meg Magyarországot? Mi az a nagy többség és egyhangú többség, aki Magyarország számára 200 millió eurós büntetést szab ki, hogyha az államoknak egyáltalán nem ez az egyöntetű véleménye. Úgy érzem, hogy a bürokraták foglyai lettünk, a brüsszeli bürokraták a mi akaratunk ellenére is használják az uniós intézményeket. Nagyon fontos mondat volt a szolidaritás, hogy legyünk egymással szolidárisak. Mi ezt komolyan gondoljuk ugyanúgy, ahogy az összes uniós ország. Ez a szolidaritás számunkra, mi úgy gondoljuk, abban is meg kell nyilvánuljon a szolidaritás, hogy amikor mi védjük a külső határt, akkor segítséget kapunk, vagy legalábbis nem akadályoznak meg minket. Számunkra az is a szolidaritás része, hogy mi is segítsük a tengeri határral rendelkező országokat, hogy ők is a maguk speciális módján a tengeri határt is meg tudják védeni. A tengeri határvédelemben való segítés számunkra ugyanolyan fontos, mint hogy mi megkapjuk, vagy a bulgárok megkapják, vagy a görögök megkapják a saját szárazföldi, a görögöknél a tengeri határ védelméhez is a segítséget. Itt egy közös fellépésre van szükség, és szerintük a szolidaritás az nem abból áll, hogy szétosztjuk az ideérkező illegális migránsokat, hanem először abból áll, hogy megvédjük a külső határokat. Egyetértek azokkal, akik azt mondják, hogy a kiváltókokat kell megszüntetni. Csak annyit tennék hozzá lábjegyzetként, megjegyzésként, hogy ameddig nem tudjuk megoldani a kiváltókokat, amíg nem lesz Afrikában és a Közel-Keleten olyan színvonal, életszínvonal, mint az Európai Unióban, addig mi lesz? Addig mit csinálunk? Mert ez nem hiszem, hogy holnap után fog bekövetkezni. Mi is indítottunk erre programot, ma már elhangzott többször a Hungary Helps program. Reméljük, hogy segít. De amíg nem lesz olyan életszínvonal Közép-Afrikában, mint Ausztriában, addig mit fog tenni az Unió? Addig meg kell, hogy védje a külső határait. Tisztelt Hölgyeim és Uraim, azért hívtam el önöket is, másokat is többször a kerítéshez, hogy lássák, hogy működik. Ez lassan egy évtizede működik. Igenis, vissza tudja tartani az illegális migránsokat. Azt mondták, ugyanannyian fognak jönni. Nem. Nézzék meg, hogyan alakult át az elmúlt évtizedben a nyugat-balkáni migrációs útvonal. És ez a kerítésnek is, a magyar kerítésnek is köszönhető. Ez igenis akadály az emberkereskedők számára. Vagy nézzék meg, hogy amikor Szerbia fokozta az ellenőrzést az észak-macedón határon. Ott vagyunk mi magyarok is, ott vannak az osztrákok is. Egy részén kerítést is építették. Hogy változtak meg a migrációs útvonalak? Igenis a határvédelem, igenis a kerítésépítés befolyásolja az illegális migrációt, vissza tudja fogni ezt. Jöjjenek el, nézzék meg, működik, ez egy működő modell. Frontex kapcsán sokan mondták, hogy sok pénzt költünk rá. Mi is úgy látjuk, hogy sokszor inkább a migráns jogoknak az érvényesítéséért mennek egyes határszakaszokra, nem a tagállamok jogos önvédelemhez való jogának a biztosításáért. Fontos lenne fellépni az emberkereskedő alvilág ellen. Ez egy nemzetközi bűnözés. Ők ott vannak Szerbiában, ott vannak Bulgáriában, Magyarországon, Ausztriában, Németországban. Végig a migrációs úton közösen kell fellépjünk. Ennél nagyobb üzlet kevés van ma az alvilágnak. A fegyverkereskedelem, a drogkereskedelem, a prostitúció mellett lehet, hogy az Európában ma már ez a legnagyobb jövedelem az alvilág számára. És amit itt megkeresnek, azt az országainkban a szervezett bűnözés megerősítésére fordítják. Késelésekre, robbantásos merényletekre, a szervezett bűnözés fellépésére. És a pénz az illegális migrációban van. Évente milliárdokban mérhető az alvilág bevétele az illegális embercsempészésből. Milliárdokban. Ennyi pénz megy a bűnözők zsebébe minden évben az illegális migrációból. Instrumentalizáció. Teljes mértékben egyetértek azokkal a felszólalókkal, jó páran voltak, hogy nem lehet eltűrni, hogy akár instrumentalizálják, politikai célokból fölhasználják az illegális migránsokat egyes határszakaszokon. Ha megvédenénk közösen a határt, a külső határt, nem lehetne ilyen akciókat véghez vinni. Ha ez lenne az általánosan elfogadott európai hozzáállás, hogy a külső határon csak legálisan lehet átmenni, az ilyesfajta kísérleteknek nem lenne alapja. Úgyhogy ezért vagyunk szolidárisak ezekkel az országokkal. Itt is szeretném elmondani román és bolgár barátainknak, hogy mi, magyarok, mint az Európai Unió soros elnökei, a schengeni csatlakozásukat napirenden tartjuk, és szeretnénk elérni, hogy ez még a mi elnökségünk alatt ebben az esztendőben megvalósuljon. Fontos dolog, az első perctől ezt mondja Magyarország is. Különböztessük meg a valós menekültet és az illegális migránst. Különböztessük meg azt, aki egy szomszédos országból egy valós konfliktus előjön, és akit nagyon távoli országból ezreket vagy akár tízezreket fizetve illegális módon embercsempészek segítségével érkezik. A kettő nem ugyanaz. A jogi szabályzást nem lehet összemosni. A kettőt különbözőképpen kell kezelni. Segíteni kell azt, aki közvetlenül veszélyből érkezik, de nem lehet elfogadni azt, hogy valaki távolból gazdasági menekültként igazából jobban éljen Európában, ezért jön át, és akár munkanélkül is jobban akar élni, vagy akár illegálisan akar élni. Nagyon fontos ennek a megkülönböztetésnek a megtétele, ez szükséges a problémának az alapvető megoldásához. Köszönöm szépen mindenkinek a hozzászólását, számomra megerősítő volt sok esetben, nyilván éreztem, hogy sokszor van nézeteltérés is, de köszönjük szépen önöknek, hogy ilyen őszintén elmondták az országok véleményét. A másfél perces időkeret úgy látom az őszintességet növeli, mert sűrűn, gyorsan kell mondatokban, rövid mondatokban elmondani azt, ami a valóság. Nincs idő körülírni, nem magyarázni kell, hanem mondani. Mi magyarok szeretjük az egyenes beszédet, úgyhogy örülünk, hogy itt is egy ilyen párbeszédnek lehetünk részei. Magammal viszek több idézetet, legfőképpen talán azt, hogy a kontrollált határok nem okoztak tragédiát, de a nem ellenőrzött határok minden nap tragédiákat okoznak. Nagyon szépen köszönöm, hogy meghallgattak, köszönöm, hogy elmondták a véleményüket.
Thank you, Mr. Ritvari. Dear delegates, I would like to thank the activities. Now there will be a lunch break. The lunch will be at the Danube corridor next to the hall, and we are going to follow the program 1:30. Oh, sorry, not okay, 1 o'clock. So we are going to follow 1 o'clock the program.
We would like to start our last session. As I told you yesterday in the evening, the sunshine has arrived to Budapest. Hopefully you will be able to enjoy some of it in the afternoon. Our last session, session number 4, geopolitical strategic shifts in the world. Dear colleagues, it is fashionable to talk about the world moving towards multipolarity, and the main dilemma is whether to support or oppose this process, or simply adapt to it. To start the debate, let me share my opinion that this framing of the dilemma is completely misleading. Since 1945, the permanent members of the UN Security Council have always been forced to negotiate with each other, and China and the Soviet Union, then Russia, have never formed a common pole with the Western powers, not to speak about the differences between the Western powers themselves. Therefore, the world order will not be multipolar from now on, but has always been so. The dilemmas do not arise from this, in my opinion. Rather, they arise from the fact that the UN world order has been based on a system of values of the UN Charter, whose most important values were peace and security, the sovereign equality of nations, human rights, and the global common good. Here and there, this system of values has always received minor or major slaps, but it has never been blown in the head as much as with the Russian aggression, committed and still happening against the Ukraine. But this war hopefully will end, and hopefully sooner rather than later. And then the world will be faced with the dilemma of whether the aggressor can remain an equal member of the club of great powers that run the world, which is now called the permanent members of the UN Security Council, or will be excluded by the rest of the permanent members. This is a dilemma because either of the two will happen. It will fundamentally undermine, in each case, the UN world order. According to the UN Charter, Russia can only be excluded from the permanent members of the Security Council by its own consent. Its exclusion can therefore only happen if a new club of great powers is created. This would essentially mean a revolution against the UN world order. If, on the other hand, everything continues after the aggression against Ukraine, as if nothing has happened, then the value system of the UN will lose its remaining credibility, and therefore the world order will also be shaken. This is my big dilemma. How can the UN world order be saved? And at what price? Should it be saved at all? How can the stability of the world be maintained still? What should the EU's strategy be in relation to all this? Or the OSCE? I am not under the illusion that we will fully answer these questions in the next 2 hours. However, I'm confident that we cannot avoid to make progress in the interparliamentary dialogue and cooperation on this very, very sensitive problem. Dear colleagues, we have got 3 speakers to start our discussion this afternoon. And I would like to give first the floor to Péter Sztáray, State Secretary for Security Policy, Energy Security from the Hungarian Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Trade. Welcome, Mr. State Secretary. We are very honored that you have accepted our invitation. And I would like to ask you and the other two speakers as well to come to the podium here in front of me. Peter, you have the floor.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests here in Budapest, it's a privilege and honor to speak to you on the occasion of this very important conference. I was here yesterday and followed with very close attention the questions, the remarks, and of course the interventions. And I draw the conclusion that I should not speak about the Hungarian priorities of the presidency because you have heard enough about that. Maybe just touch upon it a little bit. I would like to speak about how we imagine the problems today, how we assess what's happening, and what kind of different methodology we would need to be able to give the real answers to the real problems and the real challenges. And in that respect, of course, national parliaments have a pivotal role because you are controlling your governments. Through that, you are controlling the Council. And in shaping EU policies, I think the role of national parliaments has to be preserved for the future. We are in the middle of the Hungarian presidency, and as you heard, we chose the priorities for this presidency based on two principles. One was that it should be of interest to Hungary, so we chose relevant issues which are important for us, but we chose them in a way that we made it possible for all the other member states to join, because we think that they are of interest to everybody. So from CSDP to competitiveness and other subjects, I think they are all very, very important subjects for the member states. And we are ready to facilitate further discussions and decisions during the remaining part of this year. Now, today's subject is the geopolitical and strategic shift. It is a very trendy subject, of course. From a Hungarian point of view, again, for us the question is how we can contribute to strengthening the EU while at the same time preserving the present level of integration. Second, preserving the institutional balance within the Union. And third, preserving the sovereignty of the member states. And we are trying to find the solutions based on these three preconditions. Of course, there is constant change, and in the past decade we have detected that there is also a generational change now from a bipolar world towards a multipolar world, as it was mentioned also by the chairman and others. And the answer to this shift is that the EU has to adapt. The question is, how can the EU best adapt to this new situation, and what are the major challenges? The major challenges are, of course, very well known to everybody, but just to quote them, a couple of them I picked up to demonstrate how serious the change is and how serious the challenge is towards the European Union. From 2015, we had a very visible mass migration, illegal migration towards Europe, and we are still struggling with that, the impacts of that, and we are still trying to find common solutions to tackle that situation. Then we had the COVID pandemic, which was not a political issue, but it became to some extent political, and it was a real challenge on the member states and also on the institutions. We have climate change, which is a long-term challenge, but it has lots of sub-challenges emanating from the climate change itself, and far-reaching consequences, of course. And then we had several economic crises. We had 2008, then we had the one with regard to COVID, then the one with regard to the Russia-Ukraine war. So there's a constant renewal of our economies, and we have to find constantly new answers to these problems in the economy. We should not forget about the war in Ukraine, Russia's aggression against a country neighboring my country, by the way. which is, again, a generational challenge, how we can handle this situation, what role the EU should find in this big crisis in our neighborhood. And the war had other implications on us, like the food chain crisis, the energy supply crisis. And these all together form a big basket of challenges. And I think we have not yet found the good answers, the right answers to these problems. And there's also the terror attacks, both outside Europe and inside Europe. There is arms trafficking, there's trafficking in persons and drugs. And these also add to the complexity of this world of challenges and constant change. And then I should quote the war in Israel, the terror attacks against Israel, and the ongoing military operations by the Israeli army, the high amount of civilian casualties, the humanitarian crisis, and the impacts of the Middle East conflict on Europe, which is quite direct. So what are the consequences? There's an accumulated impact of all these challenges on Europe and also on the wider Euro-Atlantic area. And my reading of all this is that Europe is losing weight and global influence. And there's a shift towards Asia. And Europe has also challenges with preserving its original identity and its immune system, which is gradually weakening in this big complexity of challenges. Now, China is on the rise as a world power, and the EU has to clarify its position and its interests, how it would tackle the emergence of China. And the systemic rivalry between the US and China, and in my interpretation, there is no final answer by the European Union how we should position ourselves in this big rivalry between the two great powers. There's also a demographic explosion in Africa, especially, which has a direct impact on Europe's security and Europe's future, because there are constant new waves and masses of illegal migrants. And although the EU has made some decisions in that respect, we still need some answers to tackle the situation better and to find a common interest and common solutions for all the 27 member states. And I think we are not yet there. There's also a spread of terrorism, as I said, inside Europe, outside Europe, affecting our security. And internal security in the European Union is deteriorating too. So what can we do? My suggestion is that we should change some parts of our methodology, how we shape and how we make decisions. We need to strengthen the European Union's resilience, on the one hand, and we need to strengthen the European Union's tools to exercise influence in the world. We speak about the global Europe, but if we want to have a global Europe which is influential, then we need a different type of approach. What is that? I think we need to widen the scope of frank, rational, down-to-the-earth debates. Sometimes one has the impression that in the Council or in different fora in the European Union, we are avoiding these frank discussions. And discussions and exchanges are more formal, sometimes hypocritical, and over-politicized. So what we need to do is to be able to address the real challenges. There we need, there we need a real language. We don't have to be always politically correct, but we have to address the real problem with the real words at face value. That is kind of more realpolitik and less ideology approach. So we need very frank exchanges and out-of-the-box thinking and avoiding cliches. And thus we will be able to identify the real problems and the real common interests, because that is also missing sometimes. And to find the real tools to address the challenges. For us, the unity of the European Union is very important. It must be maintained and strengthened. But let's not forget that unity is built by incorporating all the positions of the different member states. That also means that minority positions are legitimate. If someone has a minority position that's a legitimate position, we have to discuss it and try to find the common ground between the different positions. And we need more consensus building without criticizing each other, but trying to find a common ground, as I said. Because of that, moving away from a consensus-based decision-making system, it may sound a good idea, but it would weaken the unity of the Union. It would weaken our unity politically, and it would weaken the implementation of our decisions. So because of that, I would be very cautious with moving towards QMV, qualified majority voting, because of that very reason. There's an example, NATO. You have a consensus-based decision-making. It's very difficult to get to consensus. It's cumbersome, it takes time. But when you are there, then you have a very strong common political position, and you have a very strong implementation. And I think that's what we need in the EU. That's why, especially smaller countries, should be cautious with the discussion about QMV. Yes. When I spoke about the legitimacy of the minority positions, let's not forget the 2015 migrant crisis, when about 500,000 people walked through Hungary towards Western Europe. And there were very, very harsh political discussions about how we should tackle that situation. Hungary said that we have to protect the external Schengen border. We have to decide outside the border who is eligible for political asylum and who is a migrant or economic migrant, whatever status. And we have to bring help there where the problem is and not bring the problem here into the heart of Europe. But this position was a very much a minority position, and we were so much criticized. And if you look at the mainstream position now in Europe on migration, illegal migration, then I think that's very close to the Hungarian position, actually. The mainstream position is that we have to protect the borders, and we have to decide outside the EU who is eligible for a status inside. And if someone doesn't have the right to enter or to stay, then it has to be stopped or brought back to its country of origin. So it is possible to find common ground. We just need the time and the political will to unite our positions into one single position, and then we will be strong. So unanimity, in a way, is a safeguard for us to maintain the unity of Europe. And if we want to keep everybody on board and effective implementation, then we need this type of approach. Now, what should we do to increase the role of the European Union? First, I think we must concentrate on competitiveness, which there was a lot of talk about it yesterday. It's one of the major priorities of our presidency. Without better competitiveness, the EU will further lose its global position and its global weight in this big new arrangement of multiple polarity. We must build more connectivity with third parties. And these connections should be based on equality and mutual respect. Sometimes one has the impression that we are criticizing and sanctioning our partners all the time in the world. It's a kind of copying the US democracy export. This is not for Europe. Europe needs strong partners, and the relationships have to be built on an equal basis on mutual respect. Because we cannot afford closing the communication channels with anyone if you want to remain or become again a relevant player with a significant weight globally. We need to find real solutions to stop illegal migration and terrorism in Europe, and we must make Europe's streets safe again. We must make steps to convince the warring parties in our neighborhood on the necessity of starting some kind of talks for a possible ceasefire before it goes too far, before a generation of Ukrainians die and the whole country will be destroyed. This is an untenable situation. We need the great powers. Hungary is small for that, but we need the great powers to engage, because otherwise we will not get closer to peace. And we want to restore peace. And we must accelerate enlargement to extend the internal market, to strengthen our economies, and to stabilize our neighborhood. That is also very important. And the Western Balkans, in that respect, has come a very long way in the past 20 years. So we must reward their efforts before it's too late, before others feel the vacuum. And finally, we must strengthen our military capabilities. That's why CSDP is one of the priorities of the Hungarian presidency. We need more strategic autonomy, although we need NATO, because Europe in itself is not able to defend itself or to create sufficient deterrence against any kind of threat coming from any direction. Because of that, we need NATO in the foreseeable future, but we need more European strategic autonomy, because there may be situations where NATO as such or the US is not interested in tackling a problem, like, for example, monitoring the Mediterranean, bringing help to the Maghreb countries, whatever. So we need European defense, we need European defense industry, and Hungary is a partner in that endeavor. So I apologize for talking too much, maybe, and going so much in details, but I think these are questions which are relevant to all of us, and where it's worth rethinking some kind of, sometimes the methods and the way how we approach concrete problems, and maybe we will be in a position that we will be able to find better solutions for these common challenges that are affecting all of us. So thank you once again for your attention. I know it was difficult after lunch. Wish you further good deliberations and enjoy Budapest. Thank you.
Thank you, State Secretary. And our next speaker is Mrs. Pia Kauma, the President of the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And you are the guarantee for gender balance among speakers. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Dear Mr. Chair, dear fellow parliamentarians, it is a great honor for me to join you today. I extend my sincere gratitude to our hosts and to all of you for inviting me to engage in this crucial discussion. We are meeting at a time of profound change and challenge. The global security environment is undergoing transformation, driven by new and complex threats, including cyber warfare, hybrid conflicts, and the resurgence of great power competition. These threats undermine regional stability and the rules-based international order. The most pressing issues we face is Russia's ongoing war of aggression against Ukraine. This is not a distinct conflict. It is a deadly war in the heart of Europe, a stark violation of international law, and a direct challenge to the principles of sovereignty and territorial integrity that underpin both European security and the global order. The conflict in Ukraine has profound implications for our collective security, highlighting the importance of a robust response to aggression and supporting nations in their struggle to defend their sovereignty. In this context, dear Mr. Chair, I would like to emphasize the OSCE's distinctive role as an international organization compared to the European Union. Dear fellow parliamentarians, as you all remember, the OSCE was established almost 50 years ago on the very principle to bring together to the same table 57 participating states, many of which agreed that they disagree on certain issues. Therefore, the OSCE today can and it will provide a crucial platform for dialogue. enabling constructive conversations between countries even in conflict and facilitating peace negotiations. The OSCE possesses numerous instruments which are available to all participating states to contribute to stabilization and the strengthening of democratic governance and human rights. However, the effectiveness of these instruments depends on political will. Dear fellow politicians, it depends on us. In contrast, the EU possesses a range of soft power tools and financial incentives that can be more direct, impactful. The EU's binding obligations on its member states enable it to provide substantial financial aid, implement sanctions, and exert economic pressure. Today, both the European Union and the overwhelming majority of OSCE participating states share a common objective, which is to support Ukraine and to uphold its right to self-defense against Russia's aggression. Our cooperation is therefore vital in various areas, such as locating and repatriating children, forcibly taking to Russia, and aiding in rebuilding efforts. During my recent trip to Ukraine, I witnessed the resilience of the Ukrainian people, with rebuilding already underway in devastated cities like Irpin and Bucha. This underscores the urgent need to continued support as Ukrainians strive to live their lives amid ongoing conflict. Turning to the broader geopolitical context, the crisis in the Middle East also impacts European security. Similar forces are at play, and Russia benefits from the diversion of attention and resources to the Middle East, further complicating the global security landscape. Despite the gravity of the situation, we must not lose hope. Building peace requires trust and faith in the future, and it is the role of us politicians to foster this faith. The OSCE Parliamentary Assembly remains committed to working collaboratively with all stakeholders to promote peace, stability, and security across the Euro-Atlantic and Eurasian regions. Dear Mr. Chair, fellow parliamentarians, let us seize this opportunity to engage constructively, to collaborate closely, and to take decisive action in addressing the pressing security challenges of our time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I would like to ask Mr. Nicolas Pascal de la Parte, member of the Subcommittee on Security and Defense of the European Parliament, who has spent the last 2 days with us, to take the floor. You have the floor.
Dear Chairman, dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, it is a great pleasure and an honor to be here today addressing you by invitation of the Hungarian presidency, and I feel myself very comfortable and happy to be here. As my predecessor speakers have already said, we are in a geopolitical change, but we should perhaps identify exactly what do we mean by that. Conceptually speaking, there are a lot of definitions that we are the West against the rest. We have a kind of multipolarity wall, a new imperialist wall. I would prefer perhaps to retain the concept of an asymmetric bipolar wall with two big powers, one established, the US, and the other one emerging, China. We are, therefore, in a period of transition, a transition from the post-Second World War order, from multilateral rules-based order, which is put into question by many players, but mainly by those who don't feel comfortable with this rule-based order. One is Putin's Russia, the other is China. Putin's Russia has decided to ignore and to violate severely the principles, the convictions of the UN Charter. International frontiers, the political independence of the state, the territorial integrity of Ukraine has been violated. And with that, Russia put itself outside of the international order. But Russia is not a normal country. Russia is one of the founders of the UN system after the Second World War. Russia is a permanent member of the Security Council of the United Nations. Russia is the biggest nuclear power in the world. Russia has a veto right in the Security Council. What I mean by that? That by Russia putting into question, aggressing the international order, the whole of it is in tatters. It's not only the appalling consequences for the Ukrainian population, it's not only the devastating effect on the infrastructure, it's also the example that Russia is setting around the world. I am sure that there will be dozens of tyrants and autocrats looking whether by force you can change or whether or not you can change international frontiers. They are looking for whether or not by force you can march into a country to put a puppet state. They are looking whether or not by force you can change the order that was established decades ago. That's why the consequences of the invasion of Ukraine by Russia, beyond the human suffering, will have political consequences for the decades to come. In addition to this, we have China, an emerging power with more assertive, because they think that they are coming back to the place where they should never have abandoned 200 years ago. They lost the Industrial Revolution, they lost 1 or 2 centuries, but now they say now it's our time, and in 2049, 100 years after the Mao Zedong Communist Revolution, we'll be back as the first power of the world. This is the objective of the Chinese, to be the first power of the world in 2049. They have published. And for that, we have no time to go into this, we have now the clear, what is called by the scholars, the Thucydides dilemma. Thucydides dilemma, you know that there is an analyst in the Kennedy School in the US, Graham Hallison, who said that once you have established power and there is emerging power, normally this tension, this dialectic tension, out of 16 historical cases he studied in his essay, the Thucydides trap, of these 16 historical cases, 12 were solved by war and only 4 by peace. One of these 4 is the German-French rivalry that brought about 3 wars, and after the Second World War, we set up the European Union, and it is an example of peace and how to sort out the problem peacefully. We are one of these 4 good examples, how to sort out differences, historical differences, by negotiation. But in addition to this great power scheme and the transition from the rules-based multilateral order to something else we don't know yet, we have also the disruption of the new technologies. I'm talking about artificial intelligence, quantum computing, then the cloud, the Internet of Things, biotechnology, robotics, so on and so forth. And this, coupled with the access to these new disruptive technologies by non-state actors, makes the world very much a dangerous place. Because so far we're the states, the main actors of the conflicts and the negotiations of the peace. Nowadays, not anymore. There are terrorist organizations, there are some regime non-actors players who have access to these technologies and can multiply the impact on the international order. Well, this is the world we are facing in, and perhaps we could go further on this path later on. But with China, for instance, we have to be very careful, because China is not the USSR. But the USSR was clear in the Cold War who were the good ones and the bad ones. Now, not any longer, because with China we have a very complex relationship. I mean, it is a necessary political associate for many things: the fight against climate change, the fight against terrorism, the fight against many worldwide menaces and risks. And then we need China. But at the same time, it's an impressive economic competitor. And at the same time, it's a systemic rival, as the European Commission said a couple of years ago. Then with China, we need a more complex relationship than we have now in these days with the USSR. In addition to this, China is the main owner of reserves, of dollars reserves in the world. Well, what is the European Union response to this transition period in the international order? I feel that now we have come to terms with the reality. I think that the invasion of Ukraine by Russia was a shock and a wake-up call for all of us. And I think that the European Union has been somehow surprised by history. History is accelerating at such a pace that we have the risk of being overrun by events, not to be as a world order shaper, but to receive the consequences of a world order that we are not shaping. And for that, we have to change to be a security consumer to a security provider. If we want to be a rules maker and not only a rules taker. It's easy to say, but difficult to do in this world. First and foremost, we need a revision of our strategic document, which is the Strategic Compass of March 22. We have agreed that it was a document that was negotiated and was approved and sanctioned 1 month after the invasion of Ukraine by Russia and didn't factor in this tectonic change in Europe and in the world. That's why we have to review the compact, because it was born out of date or death, if you want. And for that particular purpose, the European Commission has already announced the issuing of a white book on defense. I think it's a very good first step, a white book on defense, but I think that it will need to be declined in different strands of action in the next months and year to come. Our political commitment of our leaders was crystal clear in the Versailles Declaration, but again, things are evolving at such a pace that we have the risk to be overrun by events. So, we have been slow. We have to recognize this, to provide Ukraine with all the equipment and the armament it asked for. We have put ourselves restrictions. We have been lifting the restrictions one after the other, dragging sometimes our feet to recognize the reality that you cannot win a war only with defensive weapons and with a hand tied up to your back. I mean, it's like two football matches that you have to win a match without going to the other field, only playing in your own field, your half field. It is impossible. If you want to win a match, you have to be allowed to make scores in the other team's field. We have to remove these restrictions. I think that we have made clear this idea. The first European Parliament plenary statement was not about setting up institutions, especially the Commission, the new Commissioner for Defence, but we adopted by a large majority a statement of full support to Ukraine for as long as it needs and as long as it takes. This is a show of unity that we have to preserve. And when I say we have to preserve, it means by that we cannot allow ourselves to go bilaterally around the world with different statements. Lessons from the war on Ukraine. I think that one of the main lessons is that it is necessary the public-private cooperation and collaboration. You remember that in the first stages of the war, the first weeks of the war, it was a private company, Starlink and Google, who prevented the Russians, surprised the Ukrainians with a landing at the airport. Months before the invasion, Starlink and other great digital platforms were collaborating already with the Ukrainian authorities to avoid that. Then the public cooperation nowadays is necessary in peace and in war. Second, we have another lesson that we can draw from the Ukraine conflict, is that we have to cobble together the right mix between conventional capabilities and new capabilities. It's true that we have to maintain the platforms that project force outside our frontiers, carriers, tanks, frigates, heavy artillery is necessary, of course, but at the same time we have to develop already the telecommunications and information technologies, the drones, the satellites, and all the new technological developments of artificial intelligence. But for that, we have to find the right mix. We have to invest in both chapters, in traditional capabilities and in new capabilities. Which is the right mix? Nobody knows. It depends on all of us. But we have to talk about this and to make clear that we have to go together here as well. And if we move southwards, because now we are surrounded by a ring of fire, a reef of crisis, this is the problem now that the European Union is surrounded by failed states, by conflicts and by wars, from the North Pole to the Sahel, to the North Africa. And that's why we have to be aware that our response has to be 360 degrees. We have recognized that in NATO, but we have also to be aware of that in the European Union. If we go to the Gaza conflict, one of the main lessons that we can draw is that despite of all the technical and technological advances of Israel, despite of all the applications of artificial intelligence to protecting its borders against invasions, the 7th of October last year happened. That means that artificial intelligence, new technologies are necessary, but are not enough. We need what is called cognitive dominion, the capability of sum up information, elaborate information, assume it and process it in a way that we could anticipate challenges and attacks. This cognitive dominion is the 6th dominion that has to be added to sea, to air, to land, to space, and to cyber. And that is one of the main lessons we can draw from the conflict in Gaza. Here again, but it demands another panel to shape the guidelines of the ethical use of artificial intelligence. I think it's something we Europeans should be at the avant-garde here. Artificial intelligence, the dual use of artificial intelligence for civilian and military purposes is of such importance that we cannot have this domain absolutely unregulated. And it's one of the main challenges we have to face. If we go southwards, another crisis surrounding the European Union, we have the Sahel. The Sahel, we have been swept away. We have to recognize that. The European Union and the member states, we have been chased away. From Mali, from Niger, we have 3 military operations there, civilian military operations. Now we have none. And now it's Russia, which is present there, and the Chinese. What happened there for us to be chased? That is something that we have to reflect upon. We have to rethink, to reset, and to rebuild our relationship with the Sahel countries, which is our southern frontier, the neighbors of the southern frontier, which threatens our stability and prosperity. We need a new approach. We need a new strategy that factor in the needs of these countries, and we have to listen to them first. We cannot make a strategy in Brussels and to go there to sell it out with the purpose of projecting stability. We don't project anything if they don't want to be projected. We have to listen to them very carefully, what they need. And probably what they don't need any longer is big military operations there on their soil, but more focus, sectoral focus, military and civilian operations that help them state build. At least we have now a strong political and institutional alignment in Europe. We have come to the conclusion that the dividends of peace after the Second World War are over, and we have to invest in our own security and to be able to be a major partner to shape the new world order together with our American friends. The word then is deliver. We have to deliver to our citizens. And to deliver, we need money, funding. And it's another chapter that we have to touch upon. We have already approved the 10-year program for the European Defence Industrial Strategy. That has also come to a new instrument, which is the European Defence Industrial Programme, the EDIP, that is granted with 1.5 billion euros. It's not enough. It's only an instrument, a bridging instrument, until the new cycle of the MF in 2027. But in addition to this, we have also to beef up the European Defence Fund. We have to look into the possibilities of issuing or not bond defense or defense bonds in the market, as we did for the consequences of the COVID. Something that is in the table and deserves to be discussed, even if somebody doesn't feel comfortable with that. We should also dwell on the possibility of VAT exemptions for joint programs, joint armament programs with European dimension. I mean, there are quite a number. We have perhaps to review the statute of the European Investment Fund. There should be no taboos here. We need money, we need a lot of money to have defense, common defense, and we have to explore the existing instruments and, if needed, to create new ones. Otherwise, we will not be credible. That's why the Commission has been asked to propose an option papers with a revision of all these instruments I have just mentioned. But again, the word is delivered to our citizens, and to be aware that we cannot do it alone. What do I mean by that? I said before that we need a collaboration between the public and private. But if we need the collaboration, especially in the new disruptive technologies, more than 85% of all the investment in these new technologies come from the private enterprises, not from the state. Something new in our history. For the last 5 centuries, it was the state, our state, which was deciding what kind of weapons they needed, what kind of factories we have to set up to create these weapons. Not any longer. We depend on the technology, on the technological breakthroughs of the private enterprise. And then we have to talk to them. In addition to this, most of our weapons and ammunition industries in Europe and the US are private, are not public. While in China and in Russia, these factories and enterprises are state-run and state-owned. That's why they can react more quickly than we do. Well, to finish, I will say that, well, the strong collaboration with NATO has been mentioned. I don't need to go into this. It means interoperability of our resources, military mobility, joint drills, staff-to-staff permanent consultations, and complementarity with NATO. Here, I think that we have to make clear to have a single set of capabilities that belong to the member states, whether in NATO or the European Union. Depending on the nature of the menace of the threat, we will decide to use these single national capabilities within NATO or within the European Union. But this is something that I want to make clear. The capabilities are national and are unique and will be devoted to one organization or other, depending on the threat. Thank you very much.
Dear colleagues, I wish to thank all 3 keynote speakers for their thought-provoking presentations. According to the preliminary registration, there are 20 requests for the floor. I close now the speaking list. The speaking time is 1.5 minutes, 90 seconds again. May I please ask you to respect this limitation? Participants are kindly asked to intervene from their allocated seats by standing up and by using the clip mic. The method of the contributions is the same. I will now give the floor to the first speaker on our list, Mr. Pierre Romain Tonnet from the European Parliament. The floor is yours.
Je crois que ça fonctionne. Merci, Monsieur le Président, Madame la Présidente, Monsieur le Secrétaire d'État, chers collègues. Je voudrais partager avec vous un thème que nous n'avons pas assez évoqué durant ces 2 journées de travail. Pourtant, ce thème est étroitement lié à la géopolitique. Ce thème, c'est celui de l'identité. L'un des pères de l'école géopolitique française, Yves Lacoste, accordait une place fondamentale aux représentations, à la manière dont chaque acteur voit le monde, à la façon dont chaque acteur se représente soi-même. Ce n'est pas un hors-sujet philosophique. Au XXIe siècle, la puissance, c'est-à-dire le cœur des enjeux géopolitiques, ce n'est pas seulement une question de quantité. La puissance n'est pas la simple addition du nombre de chars de combat, d'avions, d'industries, de ressources naturelles et de brevets technologiques. La puissance, c'est aussi répondre à cette question : qui sommes-nous ? Pourquoi sommes-nous ici ensemble ? Pourquoi recherchons-nous les moyens de mieux coopérer, de mieux nous organiser ? Est-ce parce que nous vivons sur le même continent ? C'est une première partie de la réponse. L'autre partie, c'est que nous avons entre nos mains, dans nos murs, sur ces murs, dans nos villes, dans nos chansons, dans nos sculptures, dans notre littérature, notre bien le plus précieux, notre héritage culturel. Pour ne pas disparaître de la scène mondiale dans ce monde en plein bouleversement, Nous devons avoir conscience de notre identité, en être fiers, la préserver et la transmettre aux générations suivantes. Voilà pourquoi, chers collègues, face aux menaces impérialistes, migratoires ou nihilistes, notre identité culturelle est si précieuse. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Patrick Gabriel from Poland.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen, we have already said a lot in this hall about security challenges facing our European community. Rules of discussion makes us to underline chosen. Today, the situation of young people on almost all continents in many countries of the world is similar, if only because of one desire that unites them. Well, ladies and gentlemen, huge, unprecedented numbers of young people have in common that they want to emigrate from their homelands. Due to the lack of the economic and educational prospects, due to the lack of civil rights and freedom, increasingly often also for reasons resulting from climate change, violent and dramatic atmospheric phenomena. There is one more thing that unites all, or at least most, of these young people. The promised land is United Europe, traditionally called the Old Continent, a name that is today more symbolic than ever. It seems to be a huge challenge for our community, but also for the world order we know from the past. As a country on the border of the European Union, we know, as do several other border countries, that this is an area where the future is changing into the present at an extremely fast pace. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Brender Koloman, Hungary.
Dankeschön, Herr Präsident. Wir befinden uns in einer zweiten Welle von der Veränderung der globalen Weltordnung nach 1945. Dies wurde eingeleitet durch die Aggression von Putin-Russland gegen die Ukraine. Ich meine, dass wir darauf reagieren müssen, sowohl was die UNO betrifft, als auch was die Europäische Union betrifft. Es kann nicht sein, dass im Weltsicherheitsrat noch immer die Staaten sitzen, die 1945 drin gesessen sind. Es kann nicht sein, dass die Europäische Union nach der Osterweiterung und nach der Erweiterung von den Westbalkanstaaten hoffentlich in Kürze genauso weiter funktioniert wie bis jetzt. Wir müssen die EU stärken, wir müssen die militärische Fähigkeiten der Europäischen Union in guter Abstimmung mit der NATO stärken, nach meiner Erfahrung und nach meiner Überzeugung. Und ich möchte mich anschließen an meinen Kollegen Thionnet. Die Identität, unsere gemeinsamen europäischen Werte, darauf müssen wir uns zurückbesinnen. Ich betone besonders die regionalen Identitäten, die Sprachen und regionalen Identitäten. Vielleicht wundern Sie sich, Abgeordneter des ungarischen Parlaments, aber deutsche Minderheit. Und wir benutzen Deutsch hier, wenn es geht, und nicht andere Sprachen. Dankeschön für Ihre Aufmerksamkeit.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Andro Kristulović Opara from Croatia.
Hvala gospodine predsjedniče, uvažene kolege. Konflikti koji mijenjaju geopolitičku sliku Europe ne događaju se samo na granicama dalje od Europe. Oni se događaju u samome središtu Europe, odnosno mogu se dogoditi i to na Zapadnom Balkanu, u zemljama Zapadnog Balkana koje su destabilizirane strategijom destabilizacije koja skreće pozornost sa ruske agresije. To provode proksiji Putinovi, prije svega Srbija. Takvu situaciju mi podnosimo i zapravo dovodimo u situaciju sami sebe da nemamo zajedničku vanjsku sigurnosnu politiku koja je ujednačena. Zašto? Jer neprovođenje sankcija od strane Srbije prema Rusiji ukazuje na to da nemamo kriterije koje bi se trebali držati. Jesmo li odustali to zbog prodaje borbenih zrakoplova NATO-ve konfiguracije savezniku Putina ili zbog eksploatacije litija? To je pitanje za vas. Hrvatska želi u svome susjedstvu sigurne, bogate, demokratske i zadovoljne susjede. Radi stabilnosti svih nas. Mi želimo pomoći kao što smo pomogli Crnoj Gori i Bosni i Hercegovini. Zbog čega? Zbog zajedničkog mira. Ukoliko to ne postignemo, doći ćemo u situaciju da ćemo imati kineskog i ruskog igrača u srcu Europe, koja sasvim sigurno neće onda gledati mirni način života, jake i prosperitetne Europe koja čuva naš način života, europski način života. Promislimo o tome.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Dimitrios Kairidis, Hellas.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ours is a period of transition, power transition, and periods of transition, we know this from Thucydides, are crisis-ridden and full of risks and dangers. We talk a lot, and we parliamentarians in particular, but I am afraid we don't do as much and as the era demands. Are we ready for a Trump and MAGA victory in United States election, possibly? I doubt it. We talk a lot about Europe's geostrategic autonomy. It was a big thing for Ursula von der Leyen's Commission when she took over in 2019. But the results, despite some progress, are not that encouraging. We should move forward towards a European common defense. We should spend more, and we should spend more together in a coordinated fashion. I think the Tusk Mitsotakis proposal for a joint air defense in Europe is a very good start, and the defense bonds, joint defense bonds for Europe to spend on defense capabilities in this very dangerous world we live in, also a step in the right direction. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mrs. Liliana Reis from Portugal.
We have seen deep geopolitical and strategic transformations around the world. As all of us, I could map some of them, but as time don't allows me, just pointing to what is in Genesis and what is the main goal, power transition, as my Greek colleague said, and the new old order shaping. We are facing a lot of threats, like yesterday has been revealed here, from war to climate change, from cybercrime to disinformation and fake news spreading, from east to south. When we thought that the anarchy had been measured by international law, we realized that the power overcame the law. The return of power politics shows how important it is for us to consolidate our relations with our allies and rebuild our relations with partners who have gone away from us. European Union and each member state crossing multilateral and bilateral diplomacy should deepening strategic partnerships with other regional blocs, with the basis of the mutual respect, such as Mercosur, African Union, and India.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mrs. Dunja Simonovic-Pratic from Serbia.
Thank you. Dear colleagues, dear friends from Hungarian Parliament, dear Nemet, please let me show my gratitude for your support in the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe in respecting the territorial integrity of the Republic of Serbia. Your support meant a lot, not just for us who were there, but for whole Serbian people. In that extent, I want to congratulate your government and to your Prime Minister on the courage to start the mission for peace in Europe. Unfortunately, some European leaders and MPs saw it more as a provocation. That reaction speaks more about them and the double standards than about initiative itself. Due to that, I have a question for the distinguished State Secretary, Mr. Staraj. What do you think, will EU manage to achieve such a self-sufficiency with or without new member states? that it will really be able to decide its own fate and the fate of its citizens. And what is more important, who will win or who will be a peacemaker? What is bigger and what makes a difference? Thank you.
Thank you, Dunya. It was not me who wrote this speech. Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Georgos Koukoumas from Cyprus.
Dear colleagues, the increasing armament across the globe is the most characteristic and most dangerous expression of the explosive rivalries that are shaking our world. Global military spending reached an all-time record in 2023, approaching $3.5 trillion. Even more worrying is the return of nuclear arsenals to the global agenda, which is a direct threat to the future of humanity. In addition, the use of artificial intelligence in the war industry raises questions not only about the future nature of warfare, but also about the future of the planet. And while all this is happening, the armed conflicts worldwide are increasing, growing, and becoming even bloodier. Increasing armament does not always provide security. On the contrary, more often it reproduces itself as a vicious circle of self-feeding tension reinforced by the interests of war industries. Faced with this, Europe should not base its future on the so-called war economy, but on peace, on international law, on a principled foreign policy, to take initiatives to end the war in Ukraine with a just, a fair peace agreement, to end the new war in Gaza, which is not a military operation, not even just a deadly conflict, but is an ongoing genocide by Israel against the Palestinian people, with more than 40,000 dead people, including 16,000 children. It is also necessary to stop the arms trade of EU member states to third countries that are guilty of serious violation of international law, such as Turkey, Israel, and Saudi Arabia. Ambitious objectives promoting peace would be, for example, to implement in practice the UN Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons and to promote the idea, which is shared by the European Parliament, of declaring the Middle East a zone free of weapons of mass destruction. Thank you.
Next speaker is Mr. Harald Troch, Austria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are talking about the new world order, about the future. And Peter Starai said, Europe is losing weight. I'm happy that we talk about facts and we have to live with that. But Samuel Huntington, the very famous US-American political scientist, said this already in 1994. 30 years ago, he spoke in his Clash of Civilizations and the remaking of the world order. He spoke about the rise of China, the rise of Brazil, of India, and the Arab world. Now, Europe in the past was exporting Christianity. We forced Christianity on many peoples outside Europe. We exported the free market to many, many other peoples and states. We are exporting now democracy and the EU values. I think Europe should concentrate to export peace and not what we call values from religion to other points. So European defense, as you said, Koloman, is okay, but less interventions. And sometimes I feel this exporting, what we did in the past of ideologies, was a bit a marketing for colonialism. I appreciated that Mr. De La Parte spoke about we should not complain about China as a rival, but we should rethink our behavior towards other cultures, towards other countries, speaking concretely about the Sahel zone, where a lot of colonial mistakes were made, and they still play a role. And we should not complain so much about China, but we should invest here in Europe, in our technology, in our artificial intelligence, and not so much as a rival, as a systemic rival of
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Hulusi Akar, Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and dear colleagues. The international system and the global order have undergone profound changes, as you notice. Polarization between the various blocs is evident. The international and the global institutions which serve only interests of some certain powers are dysfunctional and unable to solve global problems, unfortunately. The ongoing ethnic cleansing, genocide, and the war crimes perpetrated by the Netanyahu government against the Palestinian people are evidence of this structure, this architecture. As the United Nations Security Council has become the protector of the Netanyahu cabinet, war cabinet, by vetoing the calls for ceasefire. The Netanyahu cabinet has massacred more than 40,000 innocent people, including more than 17,000 children. 17,000 children. The Netanyahu government is pushing the entire region and the world into abysses. The failure of the international community, ICJ, to stop Israel attacks has further emboldened Netanyahu government in their attempts. That is why our call for multilateralism under the motto, the world is bigger than five. As Turkey, our priority is to deepen cooperation. A note for your attention, especially for our Greek colleagues. Turkey has fulfilled its obligations under the Turkey-EU Declaration on Migration. We have closed the Aegean route and saved lives. I have already mentioned the figures, so that you can check all of those the figures within the UNHCR. Turkey's humanitarian way of dealing with illegal immigration is a model for all countries. Unlike some countries, we do not deal with illegal migration by burning and drowning migrants and the sinking migrant boats. We have not turned the Mediterranean Sea into a graveyard for migrants. We understand why some colleagues talk in delirium. Mr. President,
thank you very much. Thank you very much. The machine was responsible. Next speaker is Nike Grupponi.
Thank you very much, Mr.
You have
Chairman.
the floor.
Ladies and gentlemen, the importance of a global strategic and geopolitical changes compel us to reflect on just our approaches. The upcoming election in the United States and NATO's role demands strategic autonomy for the Union, even while sharing common goals and values. The European Union must strengthen its ability to act while also reinforcing its network alliance, particularly around NATO's central role, and privileged relationship with the United States. However, it must also pay attention to relations with the East, starting with China, which should be seen both a partner for cooperation and economic competitor, as well as a systematic rival. For this reason, it is essential to respect the timeless for the operational readiness of the European Rapid Invasion Force, without getting caught up in technical decision-making processes. If something like this had already been working, perhaps Minister Tajani would not have to request strengthening of the Aspides mission. We need to enhance common security and defense for better investment, share reasons preparing the Union for inevitable enlargement process, which, however, requires greater strength, cohesion, and the ability to support aspiring members, ensuring that integration is both gradual and genuine, yet beneficial. As an entrepreneur, allow me to spend a moment to highlight the importance for Union long-term competitiveness and increasing sovereignty in strategic sector and branding the gaps in growth, productive innovation with international partners and main competitors. A strong European economy is also more authoritative and secure Europe of the international stage. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Carlos Eduardo Reis, Portugal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ladies and gentlemen, we are witnessing a change in global geopolitical balance, and one of the new epicenters of that transformation is the Arctic. What once appeared to be an isolated and icy region is emerging as one of the most important geostrategic battlefields of our time. The accelerated melting caused by climate change is opening up new opportunities, but also causing increasing tensions between nations, seeking to assert their control and explore the reaches of this territory. Russia has already invested in Arctic militarization, rebuilding and modernizing former Soviet bases, and positioning equipment such as radars and air defense systems. However, Russia faced technical and financial challenges in the exploitation of the Arctic, And this is where an unexpected ally emerged, China. China will have the privileged access to the vast reserves of energy resources in the region and new trade routes, such as the route of Polar Silk, accompanied of an ambitious Belt and Beijing route initiative. Given this scenario, Europe can stay on the sidelines. The European Union, along with the Nordic countries and Canada, must intensify its diplomatic and scientific presence in the region. It's essential to promote a multilateral approach to regulate Arctic activities and ensure that exploitation of the resources is done in respect for the environment. The future of the Arctic and the future of the planet are intertwined. It's up to us, as global community, that the exploitation of this region is done peacefully and sustainably for the sake of the future generations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Roberto Bagnasco, Italy.
Grazie Presidente. I cambiamenti geopolitici globali stanno ridisegnando equilibri consolidati e tra i fattori più rilevanti, come abbiamo detto e ripetuto in tantissime occasioni, la guerra purtroppo tra Russia e Ucraina, che ha profonde implicazioni per l'ordine internazionale. Questo conflitto ha mostrato quanto siano fragili i confini dell'Europa orientale e ha accelerato la coesione occidentale con la NATO e l'Unione Europea, che hanno rafforzato la loro cooperazione in risposta all'aggressione russa. Le sanzioni contro Mosca, il supporto militare e anche umanitario all'Ucraina e il riarmo di diversi paesi europei stanno ridefinendo le dinamiche di sicurezza in Europa. Parallelamente, la Cina sta giocando un ruolo sempre più determinante nello scenario internazionale. Da una parte Pechino ha mantenuto una posizione ambigua sul conflitto ucraino, non condannando apertamente la Russia, anzi, ma cercando di non alienare completamente l'Occidente, almeno sul piano formale, poi su quello sostanziale un po' meno. Dall'altra la Cina sta espandendo la sua influenza economica e politica in diverse regioni, in particolare in Africa, Asia e America Latina, attraverso varie iniziative e il suo crescente potere economico, tecnologico e militare rende la Cina un attore centrale con cui l'Occidente dovrà confrontarsi a lungo termine. Infine, la zona dell'Indo-Pacifico è diventato un nuovo epicentro delle tensioni geopolitiche. La crescente asservità della Cina nel Mar Cinese meridionale, le tensioni su Taiwan e la rivalità con gli Stati Uniti e i loro alleati come Giappone, Australia e India stanno
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Mr. Mustafa Kanbey, Turkey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The international system has been going through a very challenging period over the past 2 decades by polarization. A new international system is emerging. Today, multiple crises, complex security threats, uncertainties, internal and international conflicts, transnational terrorism, irregular migration, environmental issues, food and energy insecurity and economic resistance pose serious threats to global peace, security and stability. Under these circumstances, it is vital to opt for the escalation. As an integral part of the European security structure, Turkey is aware of its regional and global missions and fully implementing its responsibilities. Turkey has determined fight against all terrorist organizations. Transnational organized crimes and illegal migration contributes to the European security and stability. As Turkey seeks to cooperate with the EU, it expects the same attitude from its partners and allies. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Jevrosima Pejovic, Montenegro.
Dear fellow colleagues, I will use this opportunity to emphasize one important issue. At present, Montenegro's information space is deeply compromised by the effort from Eastern propaganda outlets, which actively works to undermine public trust in the EU. As Montenegro moves closer to EU accession, we anticipate a significant escalation of anti-EU disinformation campaign. This external manipulation of public opinion poses a direct threat to the democratic processes that underpin the EU aspirations. The most effective countermeasure the EU can take is to bolster the independence and resilience of Montenegro's media landscape. And that's just one of the reasons why the EU must ensure that the integration of the Western Balkans is based on the merits of individual countries rather than proceeding as a regional bloc. A merit-based approach will reward those countries that undertake the necessary reforms and align themselves with the EU standards, sending a powerful signal that the EU enlargement process remains credible and attainable. And this is very important, especially in this globally dangerous moment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next speaker is Hisen Berisha from Kosovo.
Ndërruar kryetar, ndërruar parlamentar, është e rëndësishme që vendet që aspirojnë të jenë anëtarë të BE-s të shihen në kuadrin e kësaj strategjie, duke u mbështetur përfshirë dhe rubrikën e Kosovës në krijimin e kushteve për fillimin e zbatimit të kësaj strategjie si anëtare e re në ardhje brenda familjes së madhe evropiane. Prandaj strategjia juaj është e mirë, pasi përfshin ndryshimet e kontekstit të sigurisë brenda rajonit Ballkanit Perëndimor dhe duke marrë në parasysh edhe përmasat e luftës hibride që Rusia synon të ketë në zonën gjeografike. Kosova është e gatshme të zbatojë normat e kërkuar në këtë strategji në mënyrë që gjatë periudhës 25-26 vendi ynë të kontribuojë gjithashtu në sigurinë kolektive të familjes së madhe evropiane. Republika e Kosovës është një shtet i pavarur dhe demokratik. Ne po ndërtojmë institucionet dhe të zhvillojmë demokracinë ku çdo qytetar të ndihet si në shtëpinë e vet, ashtu siç do të ndihemi nesër në Bashkimin Evropian ku aspirojmë të bëhemi pjesë. Si shtet ne po përballemi me destruktivitetin e Serbisë në politikë, ekonomi dhe siguri, por kjo nuk na çudit, por disa deklarata të liderëve ndërkombëtarë inkurajojnë Serbinë të vazhdojë me qëndrime të pandryshuara ndaj Kosovës, ndërsa presioni politik dhe diplomatik po drejtohet ka Kosova duke mbajtur atë nën masa sankcionuese. Si popull kemi jetuar në okupim dhunë, u detyruam të bëhemi emigrant në vend të bujarë të Evropës dhe të bosë, edhe pse ishim të pabarabartë gjatë luftës, kishim zotin në anën tonë dhe aleatët, kështu që liria dhe demokracia e rregullon ligjërisht lëvizjen tonë të lirë përmes liberalizimit të vizave në Kosovë. Një koleg nga Lituania theksoi për të pasur paqe në vitet e ekuilibri i forcave. Sot Serbia përshëndrohet një hegemon ushtarak në rajon. Pse dhe nga kush pritet të sulmohet? Vetëm Serbia në rajon kultivon ambicin ndaj shtetit fqinje, e kërcënon ato dhe diskriminon pakisat kombëtare brenda jurisdiksionit të saj. Megjithatë, së bashku ne mund të arrijmë shumë për më tepër në trajtimin e çështjeve vendore, rajonale dhe ndërkombëtare. Në përfundim, le të festojmë madhështinë e popullit evropian, le të lutemi që më të mirë.
Thank you very much. And the last speaker is Mr. Mircea Chelaru from Romania.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The last but not the least, dear fellow, my European sister and brothers, I am listening here excellent speeches, plus at the same time a lot of dreams. We discussed today about the geopolitics, but where? Inside of an endless global disorder. The main shifts in the current geopolitics is simply defined from the recognized international rules to the local broken rules and the politics actions to the fait accompli. Many of you, dear colleagues, have spoken only about the war and how to urge it. But what about the peace? Where are the peacemakers? Where are the peacekeepers? Believe me, the most expensive things in the world is the peace. For it is worth to pay as much as needed, but with an unique exception. The price should not be the freedom itself. Let's invest in peace, my friends, as a unique guarantee for the life for future generation, for our civilization. This is the real politics. And together, I ask you, Let's save Europe because it's in our power. Let's make Europe great again as a unique Earth, but not anyhow, but during in our lives. Respectfully, thanks for you, my dears.
Thank you very much. Dear colleagues, now I would like to give the floor to our keynote speakers. First, I would like to ask our State Secretary Péter Sztáray to come up here. Up to you, as you like. Let's come here because it's better for video. For the Ministry of Interior, you know.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks for all these very important and interesting remarks relevant to our subject of discussion. I would like to pick up a couple of them only because I know it's a bit late and you have covered so many different issues that maybe it's better now to focus them and to narrow down the subject. So first, strategic autonomy. I think it was raised by one of our Greek colleagues. Yes, I spoke about it, but I think that's a big question of the future. If we can increase European defense capabilities, that will strengthen Europe, not only in the area of the military, but also politically. If Europe wants to be global or Europe wants to be a foreign policy factor, then it needs more military capabilities. It's so important. And then we will have a higher level of strategic autonomy, and that will just strengthen the Union. European countries have done a lot in the past 10 years, but not enough, I agree. At the Wales summit, at the NATO summit in Wales, 10 years ago, there was a pledge by everybody, all the member states of NATO, to reach a 2% level GDP-wise in defense spending. And still, there are 8 to 10 NATO members who have not reached that. These are all European, well, no, except one, but most of them are European NATO members. So I think there is room to do more, and we have to do more, but we have started a good path, the right path, to strengthen ourselves. The Serbian colleague raised very difficult questions, but thank you for acknowledging my Prime Minister's activity, which was based on his national capacity, not on his capacity as the President of the Council of the European Union, and it's important to say he stated that. The message of that peace mission was that someone has to start generating talks between the parties. As I said, we are not big enough to achieve that, but there are other countries who have a stake, and that was why he visited several countries, Moscow, Beijing, and he also talked to other players, Turkey, US, because these are the countries who may push the warring parties and who may get us closer to peace. Of course, we don't have the crystal ball. We don't know what will be the outcome of this conflict. What we can hope for is that we can reach peace the sooner, the better. And the EU has to have a role, but then we have to take ourselves very seriously. And if you speak about enlargement, then I think it's a necessity for the European Union to enlarge. First to the Western Balkans, and then we will see who else is eligible and able to live up to the conditions of accession. Third, the Austrian colleague, Herr Troch. Yes, I agree that Europe has a role in the world. We have to export peace. And instead of exporting democracy values, whatever, we need to strengthen ourselves, and we don't have to complain if someone is stronger than us. We have to live up to the challenge, like the one in the area of technology with China. I think that's a very good example, because we don't have to complain, we have to cooperate, and we have to develop our own capabilities. And then, yes, Turkey, Mr. Akar. I think Turkey has a strategic role in tackling the migration problem. And Hungary has been advocating for that for 10 years, more than 10 years now, that the European Union and Turkey work very closely together, and that the European Union also financially support Turkey in maintaining the stability. Turkey has more than 4 million refugees being hosted, and if those refugees would embark on the road towards west, towards us, I think that would be a collapse, a possible collapse situation for the European Union. So let's be serious about it, let's take Turkey seriously, and let's work very closely together with them, because we need that cooperation, and it's a mutual interest. It's not only our interest, it's also Turkey's interest. And then Montenegro, yes. We have to underline merit-based approach is very important, and we totally agree upon that. And there is a lot of talk about possible gradual integration. We think that that's a good idea, to engage candidate countries as much as possible in different concrete areas before full-fledged membership. One thing is important, that this does not postpone the concrete accession of the candidate countries. So gradual integration is fine, but that shouldn't be postponing the concrete accession of the candidate countries. And I think Montenegro has proven that if someone wants, can deliver, and I think you are very close actually to making the next decisive step. And the Hungarian presidency will do its best to push you as close as possible. And finally, the Romanian colleague, yes, peace. That's the catchword. If we don't talk about peace and how we can get closer to peace and how we can extend the zone of stability and security around the European Union, then we are missing an opportunity, and then we are not going in the right direction. So that's why my government is putting so much emphasis on that, and that's why we repeat all the time that we have to work for peace, and we have to work for stability and prosperity. So with that, I thank you once again for your attention. I close my remarks and wish you a nice séjour in Budapest. Goodbye.
Thank you, Peter, very much. Mrs. Pia Kauma.
Dear Mr. Chair, dear colleague parliamentarians, I'm not going to comment each individual debate speakers, but I'm going to say just a few words to conclude what I wanted to say in my speech earlier. First of all, I think that it is very important for us to improve early warning systems to prevent disagreements from escalating into crisis in the first place. And that is what we see now, for example, in the case of Ukraine and in the case of the Middle East. Your Excellencies, my home country, Finland, is going to be the chair country for the OSCE next year. And as a word of conclusion, I would like to reflect on the unique perspective that my home country, Finland, brings to our discussions on multilateral cooperation and peace building. I often reflect on the wisdom of our former president, Martti Ahtisaari, who observed that true security requires more than silencing weapons. Peace also requires justice and mutual understanding. And I'm convinced that this motto will guide our country's chairpersonship of the OSCE in 2025, which I also view as a vital opportunity to further strengthen the partnership between the OSCE and the European Union executive structures. I look forward to building on the progress achieved in the past years in our European Union countries and also within the OSCE countries to address the challenges that lie ahead with renewed determination and our collaborative spirit. I thank you all for your attention and look forward to your comments and questions also in the upcoming conferences. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I would like to give the floor to Nicolas Pascal de la Parte. You have the floor.
Thank you very much. I will be very brief. I'm the last speaker. I think that one thing that we can agree upon is that we have to increase our level of ambition in the European defense. I think that what we agreed upon in the strategic compact in 2022, they have deployment force, quick deployment force of 5,000 contingents on the ground. It's not enough. It's not enough at all. I remember, I am getting old, I remember in the head goal line in Helsinki in 1999, in which the European Union, after the war in the Balkans, we decided to be able to deploy 60,000 soldiers for 6 months. Now, 5,000. I know this it means only for the rapid deployment force, but with 5,000 is not enough. We have to increase the level of ambition, and at the same time to be aware that, as I said before, the capabilities are national, and we have to accommodate the conflicts and our forces in accordance to the threat. If the level of ambition has to be increased, we need also the support of our citizens, something that has been also raised here. And I am not sure that we have, all of us in our member countries, the full support of our citizens to build up European defense. Because according to the last surveys I have read, when our citizens are asked if they want a better European unity concerning defense and security matters, they say, of course. I think that Europe has to have a single voice, and Europe has to be a global player in security and defense matters. Second question, are you ready to pay more taxes for that? The question is, of course not. Then we have here a gap. We have here a gap. Everybody wants a better defense, but has to be paid by somebody else, not by myself, by somebody else, because we have been living, as I said before, with the dividends of peace for many, many years, and we have subrogated our defense to the United States for decades, and we have been living in societies in which defense was an asset taken for granted. It's not anymore like that, and that's why we have to be honest and blunt with our people and say defense needs money. Defense is the other side of the medal for prosperity, for democracy, and for freedom. Without defense, you cannot have prosperity, neither freedom nor personal rights. If we are not able to put behind the support of our citizens, we will not be able to create the Europe of defense. I am afraid that most of our citizens think that defense is a matter of people in uniform only, military men, policemen, but not of them. And it's something that, again, we have to make a good reflection here in the European institutions in order to create instruments of diffusion, of information, of conviction, and of preaching how necessary it is for everybody to be aware that there is no defense without putting money on the table. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to all three of our keynote speakers. Very important ideas and initiatives have been spoken by you. I would like to draw your attention that in 1992, in this very hall, the OSCE Parliamentary Assembly was established. I personally was privileged to participate at that event. With these, I would like to conclude the session, our last session, and without further ado, we will proceed to the closing of our conference. Allow me a few closing remarks. First of all, thank you very much for being here in Budapest. Thank you for being together and sharing your ideas. Thanks for the discussion. I think everybody who wanted to say what he thinks did have the opportunity. Our discussions, in my opinion, have confirmed my conviction that our debates are not strategic but tactical. Important but tactical debates. Indeed, the main common strategic objectives of foreign and security policy and defense policy are fundamentally shared by all European political forces. As the EU treaty is based on the values of the UN Charter, one of our main common goals is to preserve or unfortunately restore the core values of our world order: peace and security, sovereign equality of nations, human rights, and cooperation for the global common good. Our common goal is to restore the rule of international law, a world that follows the rules as soon as possible, preferably with guarantees that prevent it from suffering another blow like the one it suffered from the Russian aggression against Ukraine. Our common goal is that European integration should be open to all European nations who voluntarily participate and meet the conditions. Our common denominator should be that they can join the European integration on an equal basis and with equal rights, in such a way that neither the newcomers' interests nor the interests of the current EU members are harmed. Our common goal is for the European Union to protect and promote its values and its interests. How to achieve all this is a matter of many different ideas and many different views, meeting and sometimes clashing, and I think we have succeeded in this task. I have little doubt that the leaders of the CFSP and the CSDP are doing the right thing when they seek to benefit from the tactical diversity that surrounds the unity of our strategic objectives. The EU's strength lies in the fact that it can rely not only on its foreign service, but also on the interconnections, ambitions, and strengths of the member states, and even the political forces within the member states. Few organizations in the world have this potential, what we colleagues embody in this room. How many international and foreign experts are among us? Just to ask one question. If we can successfully build on this, we can reverse the trends that are not working in Europe's favor, restore Europe's original authority in the world, and make Europe once again a world standard setter, if you like, great again. For this purpose, the conference reviewing the CFSP and CSDP has provided, continues to provide, and will continue to provide important intellectual ammunition in the future. We must maintain, perhaps I can say on behalf of all of us, we will maintain the spirit of dialogue and constructive debate. See you soon during the Polish EU presidency. And now I would like to inform you that the co-chairs of this conference, Mr. Kósa, Mr. McAllister, and myself, agreed on a co-chair's statement containing the main reflections on the topics of this IPC. You will receive it electronically, and it will be also available on our presidency parliamentary website. And now please allow me to invite the head of the Polish delegation to present the upcoming 26th edition of this IPC, which will take place during the presidency next year. Andrzej Grzyb. Andrzej, you have the floor.
Thank you so much, Zsolt, Chairmen, Foreign Affairs Committees and Defense Committee, Zsolt Nemet and Lajos Kósa, fellow parliamentarians. On behalf of the Polish delegation, I would like to thank you for the preparation and atmosphere of the 25th Conference of Commons foreign and security policy and common security and defense policy. Thank you for your today's debates, interventions, and atmosphere of the conference and yesterday's musically framed dinner on the ship on the Danube. At the same time, I would like to inform you that the preparation of the 26th conference during the Polish presidency is decisive. I invite you to Warsaw from March 23rd to 25th, so in the spring, as our colleague Zolt Nemet said yesterday evening. The program, together with the invitation, will be forwarded in your national parliaments and the European Parliament. Centrally, the priorities of the common security and defense policy and foreign and security policy will be on the agenda, as well as security problems in Baltic Sea area and region, and Russia war against Ukraine might be the topics of conference. So I invite you on behalf of defense committees and foreign committees of the Sejm and the Senate in early spring to Warsaw. And I assure Zolt that the weather will be as good as in Budapest. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Andrzej. Thank you very much for your kind invitation, and we will do our utmost to meet again in Warsaw. Last but not least, I would like to thank the interpreters and the parliamentary administration for their valuable work. Everybody's tireless efforts in preparing and managing this event, which was not a small event. I do hope every participant has found the 25th IPC on the CFSP, CSDP here in Budapest useful and memorable. Have a good trip home. Thank you very much.